Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? All right. First thing first, let us know, is our volume the same? Says, hey Lloyd, how you doing? So it's the third time that we're having this discussion about the Sharia, I think.
Third time.
And
Yeah.
for those who don't know, Lloyd is an amazing expert. He knows everything, like A to Z, when it comes to the Sharia. So it's amazing to hear him out. So this time we are going to talk about lying. I think that would be very interesting. And let us know first when Laudit gives a little bit of an intro if we have the same volume when we speak. So we could fix it if we don't. Thank you. All right. So what's the plan?
Well, so the plan is we crush our enemies, we hear their lamentations and the lamentations of their women. And, Conan just can't be wrong, So,
Bro, nice start. Nice, very nice. All right,
yep.
perfect audio balance, people. Okay, good. Let's do it. Let's start.
So we're going to look at the Sharia. We're going to look at the supporting documents. We're going to look at the history. We're going to look at various scholarship. All of this, for the audience, the Sharia is the final product of Islam. It took roughly 900 years to produce. So the Sharia is the culmination, the perfection, the final understanding, and the final implementation of all things Islam. Starting with the Quran as a seed, and then adding all of the tafsirs, the hadiths, and all these other sources, many of them conflicting, many of them abrogated. In other words, they're cancelled, replaced. And all of these sources, some of which you've never heard of, all of this eventually had to be coalesced into a single authoritative resource. And that is the Sharia. And now we're going to look today at the doctrine of obligatory lying, not the doctrine of occasional lying, not the doctrine of, well, maybe lying, the doctrine of obligatory lying. And we're going to see, is it a bug in Islam or is it a feature? And I think we will discover it is a deep, fundamental, foundational feature. Lying is integral to Islam. It is the opposite, the literal moral inversion of Judaism and Christianity in that regard. Any comment, Rebecca?
Unfortunately, like in real life, for those who had not experienced ever having conversation with, I don't know, Muslims, in real life, I know it's so often it is manifested in like compulsive lying. You'd ask them like what they eat for lunch and they would lie. It's so annoying. And it's like something I've encountered so much. It's so hard to get like the truth about anything. So that's my personal experience. At least I feel so. You also lived in Muslim, like in Arab societies. Did you see that phenomena where like there is this like ridiculous lying about things that why would you even lie about it?
Because it says in the Sharia that instead of outright lying, you can use misleading words, which can be religiously necessary. So, in other words, deception is baked into Islam.
Right, but I'm talking about in like unreligious context.
Yeah,
like
yeah. For completely, no. Religiously, lying is recommended. So,
right.
therefore, in your daily life, you will simply tell stories. It's just how it is. It affects everything. Yes.
Yeah, it just affects like across the board. So that's my experience. I wonder if that's something that you have experienced as well.
Yeah, no, I have. I've come across like moments that just things that make you go, huh? Oh, plenty
Oh,
often. So yeah, I'm going to talk about in detail about Islamic lying. But let me start off. I want to start with the Talmud because clearly there's going to be some fool, some Tom, Dick, or idiot who's going to come up and he's going to say, well, but in the Talmud. And I want to make it clear there is no equivalence. There is absolutely no equivalence. I've studied this Talmud extensively, but I'm going to bring up a resource. If you can just share my screen again, and I will bring up that relevant resource. Okay, so this is, and I won't play the audio on this, but this is a genuine video. This was Owen Benjamin. This is Owen Benjamin on YouTube, and he says here, and Owen Benjamin was a well-known anti-Semite before he got banned. He says, if you think they have to tell the truth, you have to understand that in the Talmud, they say, let me quote it, Jews may use lies to circumvent a Gentile. Now, this word, circumvent, very important. We're going to come to that later in an Islamic context. And that's in Baba Kama 1138. That's Owen Benjamin. That's the video. That's the link here. It's 161 seconds in. So now I want to go to that particular section in the Talmud and see what it actually says. I might do 1 or 2 sections from the Talmud, then we go into Islam to make a comparison, just to deal with the naysayers and derail that issue from the start. So this is a lengthier section, but it's not that long. The Gemara answers, Rabbi Hanina Bar Kahana said that Shmuel says, the Mishnah is discussing a customs collector who does not have a limitation placed by the governor on the amount he may collect. Now, in all of the lies that you've been told by Muslims and others who detest Jews for whatever personal reasons, they will say, well, but Jews may lie. But the question is, did they ever tell you that it just says the Talmud says Jews can lie? It doesn't say the Talmud is discussing a tax collector who is stealing money from people. Do you ever heard them saying that portion out loud, Rebecca?
No, I actually never heard the first part either, so.
Yeah, so it's a tax collector who does not have a limitation, and he collects as he pleases, so he's stealing money to line his pockets. Alternatively, the sages of the school of Rabbi Yanai said, the Mishnah is discussing a customs collector who stands on his own. He was not appointed by the government, but on his own, and he forces people to give him money. I wonder why Owen Benjamin never mentioned that part. It just amazes me. Here's the link in case you guys want to have a look on Safaria. Now, note the Talmud is really a selection of, it's a debate, it's a discussion, a series of questions and answers. It's a series of problems, legal problems that are posed, and then questions and answers about that. It's called peppering, right? It's attacking a problem from all sides. So, or pilpul. So the Gemara notes, and there are those who teach with regard to the Mishnah that one may vow before murderers, plunderers, and customs collectors in order to reinforce the claim that a certain kind of item being committed is teruma. In other words, don't take that because it's not mine, it belongs to the king, right? So in front of murderers, plunderers, and these thieving customs collectors, how do I stop them from stealing? But then it goes on. Can it be that it is permitted to pronounce such a vow before customs collectors? And then it says, it gives another view. But doesn't Shmuel say the law of the kingdom is the law? It should therefore be prohibited to state such a vow before customs collectors. So if this man comes to your door, give him what he asks for. He represents the kingdom, whether or not he is honest. Rabbi Hanina Bar Kahana says that Shmuel says, the Mishnah, in its ruling with regards to a custom collector who does not have a limitation placed on the amount he may collect. Alternatively, the sages say that the Mishnah issues its ruling with regards to a customs collector who stands on its own. Okay, great. Those are 2 opinions. It's not about just lying randomly. Now it goes on, okay? The same argument is repeated here, but then it goes on. Now, Rabbi Ashi says the Mishnah issues its ruling with regards to a Gentile customs collector. Now they're issuing a different set of problems, whom one may deceive as it is taught in a Baraita. And this is the section where everyone loses their tiny little minds, okay? In the case of a Jew and a Gentile who approach the court for judgment in a legal dispute, if you can vindicate the Jew under Jewish law, vindicate him and say to the Gentile, this is our law. If he can be vindicated under Gentile law, then vindicate the Jew under the Gentile law and say to the Gentile, this is your law. And if it is not possible to vindicate him under either system of law, one approaches the case circuitously, in a roundabout manner, in a duplicitous manner, seeking a justification to vindicate the Jew. This is the statement of Rabbi Yishmael. Notice it is not a law. It is not the law. It's the opinion of one person. In fact, he may not even be stating an actual genuine opinion. He's simply posing a problem for the other scholars to discuss. So, and then the big cheese, Rabbi Akiva steps in and he puts an end to it. And he says, well, Rabbi Akiva disagrees. And he says, one does not approach the case circuitously in order to vindicate the Jew due to the sanctification of God's name. God's name will be desecrated if the Jewish judge employs dishonest means. And I think that ends it. They say, no, you do not lie because lying desecrates the name of God. Final word. So understand, Muslims will lie to you, everyone will lie to you, simply because they hate Jews and they'll just misinterpret this and misrepresent this. Your thoughts, Rebecca?
No, I don't like it's. I mean, Like you have to be very creative to think it says like you are allowed to circumvent goys. Like just it's so specific, and then it turned into such a general rule when
Yep.
they say it.
Yeah, no,
It
it's just
might as well be another. It might as well be another fake quote. Like why bother? Like who did it? Like I guess it's so. Here's what's impressive. Like it's I don't know how they search for it. Clearly, I don't. Did someone actually study the Talmud and was looking for places where they can
no, it
kind
goes
of
back. You can
present a
trace it
certain
back
agenda?
you can trace it back to like the 1800s. There was a book written by a defrocked Catholic priest that became very influential. But prior to that, there were other documents written as well. So this guy was thrown out of the church, and he was actually sued over it, went to court, was asked to prove his case, and he couldn't. So so there's lots of these books that were written. There were certain ones that became influential. I'll do one more just to give an idea, okay? Many people will tell you, hold on, but if you read the Torah, the Jews must kill you. They have to murder you for reading the Torah. I'd like to just read just the one small section on that. The Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yohanan's statement. From where is it derived that a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest? It is derived from that which is stated, you shall keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live by them. Leviticus 18:5. And the phrase, which if priests, Jewish priests, Levites, and Israelites do, they shall live by them, is not stated, but rather a man, which indicates mankind in general. That's all men. You have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest. That's the exact
Do you know
opposite of
though? Why do they translate like star worshippers to Gentiles? It's not exactly the same thing.
because Gentile in this case means other nations. It's simply other nations. This is not pagans. This refers to other nations.
Right.
So even the Jews are referred to as goyim, as a nation.
No,
So
but it's not going because it says afilu avet kochavim. I can see the part like the lower part of the Hebrew, and it doesn't say goy. It says
but if you
a stars worshipper.
Okay.
Which is like a nuance. It's a nuance. It's the difference like between.
Okay.
No,
Look, I mean,
I tell you, which this is something that like confused me ever since I've known it, because it's not every Gentile is Ovet Kochavim. Not every goy is Ovet Kochavim. Not every Gentile is worshiping stars. You know.
Yeah, no, there are different categories with all of these things. There's always nuance, but just that anyone who strives to learn the word of God is considered with respect and honor. That's what the point is being carried across here. So the claim that they have to kill you, that's complete nonsense. Okay, so now that I've got that out the way, okay, let me close that. And let's start with Islam's doctrine. So
do your thing, do your thing.
Right. So deceit, ambiguity, misdirection, and lying are integral orthodox teachings in Islam. Right. So I need to now establish the bona fides of a certain scholar as well as a certain book. That's very important because we're going to come into this on occasion. So essential, Ihya Ulum al-Din, right? The revival of the Muslim religious sciences. There are 4 volumes. They're part of a set. And it says, what distinguishes, and by Imam al-Ghazali, what distinguishes this book from others is its strong spiritual influence on the reader, right? Because it makes him seek soundness of heart and Allah's pleasure through the act of worship. So following the directions in this book will make you a good moral Muslim. It is a comprehensive encyclopedia for all of a Muslim's religious affairs, including beliefs, acts of worship, dealings and character, as well as for individual and societal welfare. So follow what's in the book, right? And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is a towering figure in Islam, right? He is one who teaches only to help man to live a life in accordance with the sacred law. Islamic sacred law is the Sharia, right? And understanding its deeper meaning. And he has helped generations of Muslims towards this end. Okay, so it is a very powerfully, renowned scholar and work. Ihya Ulum al-Din, the revival of religious knowledge. Right, written in the 11th century by Ghazali, a classic introduction to the pious Muslim's way to Allah, deals with the principles and practices of Islam and how to attain the higher stages of Sufism. It is perhaps the most influential work on ethics in Islamic history. So let's say ethics and morals in Islamic history. It became the most frequently read Islamic book after the Quran. Keep these facts in mind. Nawawi, who stated that were the books of Islam all to be lost except only the Ihya, it would suffice to replace them all. Nawawi is a great scholar, and the Reliance of the Traveler, one of the major Sharia manual that I used previously, he is the guy that the Reliance is the recension of Nawawi. So he's a very important Sunni scholar. So he's got a great name, and therefore, him putting his stamp on it, this is really high praise. It's like the Pope saying this thing is amazing. Okay. Again, the Muqtasar Ihya Ulum al-Din, packed with boundless wisdom by the great 11th century scholar Ghazali. It is probably the most influential work in Islam after the Quran. The Ihya has been studied and taught all over the world. Notice I'm using Muslim sources. It's very important that I establish the bona fides here. The Ihya Ulum al-Din, the revival of the religious knowledge, one of the most famous and widespread Islamic books, and so on and so on. And let's see from a quote from Mr. al-Ghazali himself. Of course, a lie is permitted. If the truth would lead to another prohibited thing that is worse than lying, then lying is permissible. That's from the 40 Principles of the Religion, which is from Ihya Ulum al-Din. Of course, a lie is permitted. Yes, definitely. Because if telling the truth is going to cause embarrassment, shame, cause a few problems, then of course you lie, because lying is permissible. Any comment so far, Rebecca?
Can I? Listen, all right. Did you ever watch the video I've made about comparing Islam to the demons, the way they're portrayed in a certain anime?
Yeah, vaguely familiar, but no.
So I've made a video about Soso no Frieren, which is an anime, and there are characters there that are defined as demons, and you have a whole arc going with them, where the humans try to have some negotiate peace with the demons, and they do everything the way Islam does, which is amazing. And it just reminds me of that. Like, it just, they don't have families. They don't know what mother or father is, which is like a recurring theme in this anime episode, where they go like, yeah, but like I do it for my mother, or I do it for my father, and the one who knows them say, these people, they don't have mothers or fathers. Like, they don't have them. They just use it because they know that it would make you feel a certain way.
Right.
So
okay.
It's so much like them. I know it's weird. It's a weird tangent.
Oh, no, it's not strange at all. No, but notice that if you look at the 10 Commandments, right, you have thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not lie. Right, that's very clear. God does not lie, but Allah can lie. Allah can deceive. To deny Allah's ability to do anything, to be even a greater deceiver or more evil than Satan, is to blaspheme against Allah, is to rob Allah of his power. In fact, Allah thus has no moral boundaries. Right? That's a very different idea of God. So let's continue with that. Now, let's look at some of the Islamic doctrines of deceit. There's taqiyya. Now, you'll hear that term a lot, taqiyya. Now, technically, it is a Shia term. Sunnis will say, well, no, that's a Shia thing. We don't do that, as if they're innocent little lambs. Because in Sunni Islam, technically, it is called muddarat. So taqiyya is called muddarat in Sunni Islam. However, the word taqiyya is so common that the Sunnis use it as well. The Sunni scholars will use it. It's a common term. It's not an unknown term. And this is called calculated deceit, calculated deception for the purposes of spreading Islam. It's got two use cases. Technically, it's got two use cases, right? But the one is a technical term to allow you to proceed with war. So it's deception for the purposes of spreading Islam under warfare conditions. And the other is, your typical just taqiyya, whatever. Kitman, deceit by silence or omission, lying by omission. An example would be when Muslim apologists only quote a fragment of the verse 532, that if a Muslim kills, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind, which is taken from the Talmud of all things, which is crazy. It's from Sanhedrin, so Sanhedrin 4, I think it is, while neglecting to mention that the rest of the verse and the next one, and also that is allocated as a ruling specifically for the children of Israel, the Jews. However, for the Muslims, it says that they need to kill anyone, expel, or they need to chop off one hand and one foot or crucify those who insult Islam, right? So they mandate murder in undefined cases of corruption and mischief. This means technically the term that they're referring to is temptation away from Islam. So if someone tempts you away from Islam, murder them. That's effectively what that comes down to. So tawriya, deceit, ambiguity, lying by omission, right? We'll go through examples as we go. Taysir, deceit through facilitation, not having to observe all the tenets of the Sharia. So lying by omission, we will come to an example. So for instance, I believe tawriya would be like, is your mother home? Is your mother here? Is your mother home, right? Someone knocks on the door. Is your mother here? And you say, no, she's not here.
But it's like that.
She's not here.
Yeah.
She's not here right now. She's not physically here. So you're not. Well, yeah, you're lying. She's in the house, but so this is misleading. We'll see how this deception is permissible in Islam. In fact, it's recommended. Taysir is deceit through facilitation, not having to observe all the tenets of the Sharia. It's like a Muslim having bacon with you, going to the nightclub, drinking, just to get in your good graces, because it's permissible. He's allowed to break every single rule of Islam if he perceives there's a need. But this is all subjective. Darura. Now, Taysir and Darura go together. They're part of a dual system. Taysir and Darura, you can consider them as one. Deceit through necessity, to engage in something haram or forbidden. And muruna is blending in, right? So that, you blend into a pure moderate. It's kind of like Taysir, all right? But the main deceit in Islam, the main strategy, the main concept, the umbrella under which all of deceit in Islam falls, and technically which is a form of jihad. It is actually a form. Hiyal is the main umbrella of deceit in Islam. It's a word you've probably never heard of, but it is the granddaddy of all of the lying and deceit in Islam. And it is used for the purposes of spreading jihad. It is a strategy of war. Hiyal is a strategy of war. Everything you see above, taqiyya, kitman, all of those are sub-components, are sub-strategies of warfare, of jihad. So it's spycraft to spread jihad. Any question or comment?
It's just interesting. Like, how did they get to use this word specifically for that?
Say again, please. Sorry.
Like Hiyal, like that's the word for like army. Like it's like the same root core of an army. Like. So like the poem, like Proverbs 31, like woman of valor. It's like Eshet Hiyal.
Yes,
so it's the same core.
Term. It's a military
term.
Yeah. Correct.
So I'm just looking at it like it is a military term. So I am curious, like how did it turn into like how did a military term like that, or like something that is their root is like a military term turned into
we'll have a look at it. I'll be
to
going through various very authoritative sources. We'll look at the roots of some of these words. But hiyal, the singular is hila, which in Islam means contortion, to twist the truth into pretzels or knots, contrivance, device. But this is a device to find a mechanism to cheat, to lie, subterfuge. In fact, it's normally termed as legalistic trickery. Right? Legalistic trickery. Remember, in Islam, you must understand, you don't have priests, you have lawyers. Right? Islam does not have priests, it has lawyers. Islam does not have morals, it has laws. It has legal and illegal. It doesn't have right and wrong. Islam does not have right and wrong. It has what is legal, and through legalistic trickery, through loopholes in the law, you can make the illegal legal and vice versa. Right? So it is legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. It allows the breaking of oaths, breaking of promises, the breaking of contracts in Sharia law. That's a typo. So you can break any oath, any contract, any promise. This is legal. And in fact, when you set up a contract, you should consider that it is being set up with this as a backup. So there is no honest contract in Islam. Okay, so hiyal, legal trickery in Islamic law. So legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. Contortion means something that is twisted, right? Something, a contortionist. You are torturing the truth into some crazy position. War is deceit, exactly. SDRC says there, war is deceit. That's a claim by Muhammad, right? Everyone goes, Mossad said that by way of whatnot, you will do war. Yeah, but Muhammad was saying that stuff long before Mossad existed. So contrivance, plan or scheme, something that's expedient, that's easy. Let's just do it this way, so we contrive to do something. It's contrived. It's not real. It's done just to get it done. It's a shortcut. Expedient, conducive to advantage or interest, as opposed to right. So it's something for your benefit, as opposed to something that is morally correct. Device, a plan or a scheme for effecting a purpose, a crafty scheme or a trick. Notice that all of these terms associated with Hiyal are all about lying, deceiving, taking advantage. Subterfuge, an artifice or expedient used to evade a rule, to get around a rule, to circumvent, escape a consequence, or to hide something, to hide your actions, to lie. Yeah, and all of this, again, as Villainous says, all of these ways to lie, all this effort to set it up, and it desecrates God, because lying desecrates the name of God. Right, so Hiyal, let's go to the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam. This is the primary gold standard Islamic resource in academia. A copy costs you about 45.
Is it harb? Yeah.
We'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, this is the primary resource in academia for Islam. It is written by hundreds, thousands of scholars. It's over a century old now, and to buy a copy costs about $45,000. Now, Hiyal falls under tactics. Harb means war.
Yeah.
See, Hiyal falls under the tactics of war. Harb means war. Now, in military science, the plural form adab is a synonym of Hiyal, meaning stratagems in war. Lying in Islam is a tactic of war. Adab al-Jadal, that's important here. In theology and law, a method of debating in which were discussed, and sadly you'll find that the academics tend to whitewash things a little bit, so just be aware. A method of debating in which we discuss questions that are controversial. So it is not a matter of finding the truth, but of convincing the opponent, of persuading him, of winning, right? So it is not about, so understand Islamic debate. Muslims always go, let's have a debate. Let's debate this, debate me. Because they have a specific method that's been around since the 800s that was established then, which was designed to make them win, because they have a specific method of arguing based on the Greek sophists, based on sophistry, designed to win, not to find truth, not to determine what is true, but merely to win. And we'll talk more about that. So hiyal, artifices. We just discussed artifice, devices, expedients, stratagems, the means of evading a thing or effecting an object. Mechanical artifices, tricks. Tricks are beggars and conjurers. And in law, it is the circumvention of the law. How do I get around the law? How do I use clever words, clever phrasing, tricks, artifice, legal trickery to get around the law? The law says A, well, I want B. How do I do that? How do I make lying, how do I make stealing legal? How do I get out of this contract? So these are legal devices. The use of legal means, for notice, extra legal ends. Extra legal just means illegal ends. How do I legally make the illegal legal? That's all it is. And in military science, hiyal, with the synonym maqaid and adab is custom or habit, something you always do, is a technical term for stratagems of war. So hopefully that was enlightening for the audience.
Yeah, it's very interesting, I think.
So
yeah, people are saying, see, damn, this is good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, a method of debating, exactly. So never debate with Muslims, because they have a specific method of debating based on the sophists from Greece. It's a long story. We'll get into some of that. But it's a way of lying very cleverly. So don't invite them for a discussion. Just invite them for a discussion and ask simple questions. Use basic logic. It's a way of circumventing logic. It's a way of denying logic. It's a way of just lying with rhetoric. We'll talk more. So Hiyal. Now this is Wikipedia. Take it for what it's worth. Okay. So the main purpose of Hiyal is to avoid straightforward observance of Islamic law in difficult situations, while technically still obeying the letter of the law. Right? An example of Hiyal is the practice of what they call dual purchase. Because, Rebecca, did you know that Jews are evil because they practice usury? They charge interest on loans. Did you know that that's terrible? And Muslims
Yeah,
are good because they don't do it, because that's why Islam is superior, except that Muslims have exactly the same practice.
they do.
They do. And because they use
I
Hiyal.
thought they just steal when they need something.
Oh, there's also that. You're right. Theft is always, there's always theft.
Yeah, like why would you loan if you just take
At
a very
gunpoint. I fully understand, and that's right.
like
You're right. But notice they use Hiyal to get around the prohibition of usury. So an example of Hiyal is the practice of dual purchase, okay, to avoid the prohibition of usury by making two contracts of purchase, and then you buy it back at a higher price later. So the difference is your loan, right? Is the interest, similar to the modern futures contract, right? And there's a special subfield of Hiyal called oath trickery, called ma'arid, dedicated to the formulation of ambiguous statements, like think politicians, right? Designed to be interpreted as an oath or a promise while leaving open legal loopholes to avoid perjury. So I wasn't lying, I just deceived you, I just misled you. So views on its admissibility in Islam, it says here in Wikipedia, have varied by schools of Islam, blah, blah, not even true. Nonsense. Okay? And this is a type of hiyal. And a substantial literature of such tricks has developed, especially in the Hanafi school of jurisprudence, which is the largest school of jurisprudence. All the meaning is that the specialists there develop the best tools, and we all rely on their skills. Because typically within the Sharia, you have got 4 schools of jurisprudence, okay? 4 main schools. Well, let's say there's 4 schools. Ignore the rest for now. So what you have is that a scholar in a given school will come up with a golden formula. He'll define this thing really well, and then everyone else will say, you know what, that guy's the best. Let's just follow that. Ignore the work we've been doing. Just follow that dude. And that means that the Hanafi school has established the best ways of lying. And it says here, the earliest development of the field of lying, of hiyal, okay, is Kitab al-Maharij fi Hiyal, or the Book of Evasion and Trickery, by Shabani from 805. A more comprehensive treatment is Kitab al-Hiyal al-Maharij by another dude, and I think it's like 100 years later or something. So they've been doing this since, I told you, the 800s.
So today, right? How many, let's say, somebody's sitting down, and how much do they use those books to build a strategy for how to deceive?
Because it's become a part of the cultural fabric of Islam. They don't have to be explicitly taught because it's part of the practice. It's part of,
right.
You grow up like that. It's normal.
So they don't just go back and be like, okay, how would the best way to build a strategy?
The scholars might do. Your scholars will do it, but the scholars have
no, because Hamas did a lot of things like that before October 7th, actually.
So again,
Hamas did, it seems like Hamas did do things like that before October 7th.
Yes. Yeah,
but it might have been already in their knowledge, without them going to the books.
No, they will do this in consultation with the best scholars who will be doing the research, who will be going through these books. Remember, these books are from 800, and they've developed them over time, and they've become established in the Sharia, within the legal texts of the schools of fiqh, right? Your 4 schools, right? Like they mentioned, the Hanafi school is the best at this, right? It doesn't mean that, those Hanafis are nasty little liars and the rest are squeaky clean. No, it just means those guys are the best. We'll just go with them.
Right. The best liars.
They're the best liars. They've got the best material. We work with them, It's like Mercedes makes the best cars, we'll buy theirs. That's all. Doesn't mean the others don't make cars. These guys make the best ones. So jihad bil lisan, jihad of the tongue. So you have jihad by the word, or jihad al kalam, right? So there's lying, jihad with the mouth, right? So now you've got adab al jadal became the technical term for the method of debating, not only in theology, but is also evident, right, in jurisprudence, right, which is some roughly equivalent here into what the Talmud does, where it has debates in the Talmud. but they were discussed questions that were controversial between the schools of law. See, ikhtilaf. Now, the term ikhtilaf is where Muslims are going to lie to you as well. They'll say, but the scholars disagree. No, the scholars agree on 80, 85% of things, right? So when they say the scholars disagree, like for instance, if you're an apostate, you leave Islam, right? They all decide, all four schools agree, you die.
Yeah.
But
No,
how
no,
you
no.
die, that's the debate. That's the disagreement. Do we choke him to
Yeah,
death?
obviously.
Do we throw him off a building? Do we drown him? Do we burn him? Do we hack off his head? Do we drop a rock on his head? That's the disagreement. They all agree you die.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like my immediate. This is the immediate direction that my brain went to. You so like there is but there is disagreement. All I could think, only the only disagreement, like or immediately was like, they disagree on how to execute someone. That's what they disagree.
Exactly.
That would
we wait one day.
That would be the only
3 days.
thing.
We do it right now. Those are the things they disagree on. So now, ikhtilaf means difference. It's the doctrine of difference that defines the difference between the four schools. It actually harmonizes. There's another doctrine on top of that. Actually, ikhtilaf is a doctrine defined in a book called the Mizan al-Kubra by another by Sha'arani. Okay, Sha'arani. Sorry, whatever. I shouldn't even try to goggle these Arabic terms myself. But basically, it's just it harmonizes the four schools as one school with variations in terms of how hard it is to follow that particular way. So the Sharia has easy and hard, and the best go the hard route, and the other everyone else goes the easy mode. Okay, and it is not a matter of finding the truth, but of convincing the opponent. Okay, so it is Sunnah, it is science. Okay, so this is from the Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 13. There are 13 volumes in that particular series, and I've got them all. And Badi means an innovator or creator, one of the attributes of God. In literature, Badi is the name for the innovations of the poets in literary figures, right? For trope in general, and in literature, all kinds of figures of speech. So now we come to, that's Badi, that's the base term. Then you come to the science of Badi, the ilm al-Badi, right? The science, the branch of rhetorical science. This is sophistry, how to use rhetoric. Remember, language, if you go back into the medieval era, you had the trivium, logic, rhetoric, and grammar. Or shall we say grammar, logic, and rhetoric? Grammar is to use good words. Please.
No, I wanted to say, I've been thinking, right? So I've encountered this issue where I realized like a lot of people don't understand how they're being manipulated, and I didn't know how to list it exactly. And I've been thinking right now, like, this is literally how they do it. Like, there is a list here. You just have to translate it to modern language so people would understand. And it would make it simplistic, because I think that's actually, like, if you do it reverse, right? So I'm thinking like it's so like obvious, but I couldn't demonstrate it the way it's here. Because for example, I watched a reel with somebody who was like, oh, that's a funny reel, and I said, like, listen, they start with a joke because they want to bring your defense levels down, and then notice the examples they choose, but what examples they don't choose, what is omitted, what is the locality, what is the scope. And I was like, and this is how they manipulate you. Huh?
They actually have a name for it. It's called Samia. It's called letter magic. We would think of it as NLP. Think of NLP for manipulative purposes. It's essentially a very advanced method of NLP. They would view it as I said, letter magic. It's mind control. It's being able to manipulate through language, to lead through language. Yeah, they're very good at doing it.
I don't know if they have the specific method of start with something funny so somebody would bring their defense mechanism down, because that works. You start, like, if you make somebody laugh, they're like more receptive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
of course.
I don't know if it's there, but it's.
I can talk about that later. I can use some examples. But notice there's a guy.
But it's like in general, like, is that already there, or is it something that developed later? For example, this kind of tactics. Because if I could have like all the list of all the methods they do it with, That would
Look,
be
the
amazing.
methods,
But I don't know if it's
they have a general structure. Look, you've got a general structure, and the rest is just creativity. But also, it's things that have become implicit. It's not always explicit. It's implicit in the culture. It's implicit in the communication. It's implicit in the morality, the legality. And there's a guy called Rahat Zaman who is lying his ass off in the chat, for instance. I mean, he's just like making assertions, you know. I mean, but it's simple. So anyway, but Ilm al-Badi, the branch of rhetorical science, right? So you have grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Grammar is being able to phrase something well and describe it really well and accurately. Logic is obviously being able to do logical analysis and exclude things which are not logical and realistic, and sticking with evidence, a process of working through evidence. And then rhetoric is persuasiveness. Now, notice in Islam, they dispense with grammar, they dispense with logic, and they focus very strongly, almost exclusively, on rhetoric. Facts don't matter because facts get in the way of their lives. And they speak here of the artifices of the ornamentation and the embellishment of speech. So from poetry, from prose, they learned how do we add nice, how do we create nice sounding speech that's completely 100% false, basically. Deceiving through nice language. That's how that developed. Right, so now it is sunnah, right? So adab means the same as sunnah, the sunnah of Muhammad, right? The sunnah, the way of Muhammad, the example of Muhammad. So ilm al-Badi, so you can get that, okay? Now, this is the sunnah of war, right? So it means, so Hiyal is a technical term for stratagems in war. You have synonyms like maqa'id and adab. And the use of stratagems in war is justified by a saying attributed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is really an old proverb, al-harb khudda, war is deceit. Right, there we go. Musad said, by way of deception, we will do war. Well, Muhammad was saying it a long time ago, right? Muhammad, I don't know, back in like 2000 BC, Muhammad was saying that. So the term occurs in the titles of works on military art, as well as in their text. They don't mean military paintings, they mean the art of war, as well as in their text. Right? The earliest of these words known to us is the Kitab al-Hiyal of a certain blah, 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 blah. All right? So this is about the Kitab, the book of Hiyal, and yeah, it's about lying and about fighting. How do you use spies, lying, and propaganda? This is war propaganda to win a war. It is ideological warfare. It is deception. It is deceit. So the first and simplest Hiyal were presumably thought out by the interested parties who felt the need for them. That would be the merchants in particular. But it was quite beyond them to invent and apply the more complicated forms of Hiyal. They had to have recourse to specialists in religious law. So in other words, you know, I really want to lie. I want to lie in my promises, lie to my customers, lie in my contracts. I want to be able to break my contracts. I want to be able to deceive my customers, steal their money. What the, I know, I'll go to my priest and ask him, Mr. Priesty, how do I lie? Help me write contracts that are dishonest. And that's what you guys do, right, Rebecca, in your shop? I mean, I know you guys own a little coffee shop. You guys went to the rabbis and you said, hey, help me write the most honest, dishonest, deceptive, most I don't know, nasty possible contracts with my suppliers, right? You went straight to the rabbi. I mean, I know the Catholics will just go straight to their priest and help me do, because that's what we no, that's not normal. No, you go to the imams. You want to learn how to lie, you go to the imam. That's what they did. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's disgusting.
Okay, so you know how I was interested about the Hiyal?
Yeah.
Or the way they say it, Hila. So I was looking for the different like ways, and I found an interesting one. So Hila can also be like begging.
Show it. Will be interesting, yeah.
Like
begging.
Like begging, yeah.
Okay.
So like one of
pleading.
the.
Well, I mean, it could be pleading your case.
Like pleading, yeah.
Yeah, but that's emotional manipulation. That comes back to rhetoric.
No, yeah, but it sounds like
videos, all the poor starving kids, and you see next to it the video of the huge supermarket filled with food. But all these kids, we're dying. Please send money. We don't have food. begging.
No. Yeah. That's the term. Like that's how it's used. Hilat
Yeah.
Like I found like a term, like an idiom in Hebrew that uses this word the way they write it, hila, and it's when you are like when you are pleading.
Yeah. No, exactly. So it's rhetoric, it's persuasion, it's to get your way, to get things, right? And these last, it says here, the imams, the Muslim imams, did not hesitate to supply the need for legal tricks to deceive other people. So the imams, the Muslim scholars, were the ones that supplied the methods for lying the best. And a special branch of Hiyal is concerned with the evasion of obligations undertaken under oath. Making promises and then breaking them. How do I do that? Yeah, I'm a Muslim imam. I'll help you lie just like that. Give me some money. Gibbs money, and I'll help you.
Yeah.
This is I know I'm
this
about it.
But like, I was when this ceasefire bullshit for like this horrible hostage deal. To be honest, like they showed how much they are starving in reality. Like how like they went out and started celebrating their great victory. I feel like those who aren't completely like Hamas themselves couldn't have, like, that was like just too much in their faces. Like after all the begging and crying. And you know how many stories there are of like them begging, crying, and then just stealing the money and going away.
Yeah.
Like,
no, understand. This is a normal part of Islam. This is standard Islam. This is nothing surprising. This is a standard part of the culture. It is built on deception, deliberate lying, obligatory lying. The culture is trapped in its own lies. Let's continue. So, and then Machiavelli. So now, and then you come up to references to Machiavelli, right? And they speak of, right, there are stages, right, at Maratib Darajat, right, in the Machiavellian tricks. Hiyal, Machiavelli, Machiavelli. So Hiyal is Machiavellian tricks to recruit new adherents to Islam and detach them from their religion. Oh, we're going to lie to those Christians to get them into Islam because it's legal to do so, because we are honoring Allah by getting a new recruit. So we can lie to them. And that's another part of Islam. They will lie to get people into Islam.
yeah. They could also be like sweeten, like hilu, like hila. I don't know.
Again?
Like sweeten. They sweeten it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I'll give you an example of this. We actually have an example here. I'll bring this one up. Let me just go history, and I'll bring up this particular example. This is 59 seconds long. I'm not going to play any audio. I'll just play this. Just read the subtitles. Okay? Muslim man tricked his Jewish neighbor story. And this Muslim, Sheikh Umar, this is an amazing story. Look how cool he lied to get his Jewish neighbor to become a Muslim.
Oh, sorry. What did I do? I'm sorry.
Okay, let me do that again.
Yes.
So I'll read the text as we go. Once upon a time, there was a Muslim and he has a Jewish neighbor. The Muslim was trying to find a way to bring the Jewish man to Islam. This Muslim saw goodness inside this Jewish heart, even if it was only a little. So he approached the Jew and asked, "Don't you want to accept Islam and be Muslim?" And the Jew said, "The only thing that takes me away from being Muslim is I love alcohol so much." Yeah, I'm an alcoholic, sure.
That's the good part in him, I guess.
Yeah, I would be Muslim, but alcohol is stopping me as I am an alcoholic. Oh yeah, yeah. So the Muslim made, he says to the Jewish man, "That's no problem at all. Be a Muslim and you carry on drinking," said the Muslim man. And this is a sheikh on TV. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Muslim brother was not serious. But the Muslim also said, "You can be Muslim and you can keep drinking."
By the way, there is the precedent. So the Mongolian Empire, the Mongols. So of course, Genghis Khan did not accept Islam. He treated them the way they should be treated, but the liturgy and like his descendants did. But they loved drinking, right? They didn't care. So, but they were ready to accept Islam. And when the alcohol question came up, then the Muslims were like, they are doing jihad, so we cannot complain. Like they are doing the biggest mitzvah, like the biggest thing you can do in Islam. So the fact that they are still drinking alcohol and eating bacon, like we can just turn like not notice that. Like they didn't stop. They just like the idea of some concepts about Islam, and they especially the jihad part, and this is what they stuck into.
Yeah, now remember, there are no absolute morals in Islam. Anything through Hiyal can be made legal. The biggest sins can be made legal. So he says the Shahada and he becomes a Muslim. Right? So the Jew now becomes a Muslim. So then the Muslim said, now you are a Muslim. Okay? And now if you keep drinking alcohol, we will punish you with the law.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you decide to leave Islam, then we will kill you.
That's what they do.
So this man stayed Muslim and also stopped drinking alcohol. And of course, we did good because we stopped someone from drinking. That's great, isn't it? I mean, we lied, but that's acceptable. Allah wants that. Muhammad did it. That's good. So there you go. That was a very good plan by the Muslim. And this
they also did it to, like in Jewish communities, there are stories like they would, let's say they wanted somebody or whatever, they would claim that this person recited the Shahada, so they converted to Islam. And then when they deny it, they obviously their testimony wouldn't count because there is a Muslim claiming that they had indeed said the Shahada out loud. They would be like, okay, you convert or you die.
Yeah, no, they will.
They will just say that, they wouldn't bother. They just want one person. No, I heard this person yesterday when we were talking in between us. They said the Shahada. They're Muslim now, and if then they no, what they deny it, they'll be like, okay, but now you have to be Muslim or we execute you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, no, that's because Islam is allowed to be spread by persuasion or by force. When they say persuasion, they mean lies. Persuasion.
Well,
it's legal.
That's just force. They just could have randomly decide that they wanted this person to convert specifically, and then say, okay, you convert or die, without making that story about them saying the Shahada out loud when nobody heard them.
No, someone wanted me to learn. Someone wanted me to learn Arabic. And I was
studying that's Arabic. A trick, by the way. That's a trick. Don't recite the Shahada next to a Muslim.
No, but
in a certain.
But the thing is, when you want to learn Arabic, they'll teach you the Shahada, and they'll show you the words, and you'll repeat it 3 times, and they'll say, "Now you're a Muslim," because you repeated the Shahada 3 times when you were learning to read Arabic. Because they don't tell you this is the Shahada; you're just learning to read Arabic. So that's what they do.
And then that's it. Now they have a proof that you're a Muslim if they film it, let's say, or something like that, and they can execute you if they want.
Exactly. No, I mean, this is the deceit.
And that's a real story. This is a real thing that happens in Arab countries. So just so you know, if you go to those states that are somewhat as if moderate, even if you go to those Gulf states, right? Just so you know, you can be framed like that. In theory.
No, they can do lots of fun, weird things.
They do those things.
So, okay, now dawah is political propaganda, right? So according to Masudi in this reference here, the former caliph is said to have commissioned disputants and controversialists, the Jadaliyun, to carry on a parallel campaign by means of the pen. So jihad of the pen. This was when Muslims were trying to use propaganda, right? The adab al-jadal, the techniques that they developed over time to defeat their rivals, to write things that were persuasive, that would win the battle, the religious battles with their rivals, right? And notice that you see here, dar al-dawa, propaganda, dawa, propaganda, pretension, to pretend, right? It also means call and invitation, but it also means propaganda. Now, you can go through, there are multiple references within the Encyclopedia of Islam which speaks of dawah is propaganda, right? As a function, it is propaganda, right? The propaganda that they use to get you into Islam, right? Pretension, lies are committed. That's what it hints at there. So now we have to learn about a word called eristic. Now, this is from the Greek eristikos, fond of wrangling, fond of haggling. In fact, it is fond of argument for argument's sake, someone who likes to argue for the sake of just being difficult. Argumentation that makes successful
Sounds like
disputation.
the typical Jew.
Well, yeah, maybe, I don't know. So, argumentation that makes successful
I mean,
disputation.
I know this is funny, but like it feels like very personal.
Okay, that could be you then. So,
Maybe, yeah.
someone says it's a polemicist, and that would be true. These are polemicists, right? So, it is not a way of finding the truth. It's not a method used to find the truth, right? Such argumentation reduces philosophical inquiry to just a rhetorical exercise. Clever words, nice word games, that's all it is. So, eristic argument is associated with the sophists, right? And the sophists, now just briefly, well, I added this slide earlier a couple of hours ago. Sophistry, right, means relativism over truth. Now, the sophists, like Protagoras, taught that truth is relative. Man is the measure of all things. So your opinion is the only judge. Your truth is what's important. So if everyone has 10 different people have 10 different truths, well, you're all right. According to basic logic, no, you can't all be right. 1 plus 1 can't be equal to 17, 53, 22, 19, 2.5, 1 and 3/4, 1, 7, 18, 21, and 2, right? As well, right? There's only one value that's correct, right? That's basic logic. But of course, here they're saying no, everything is okay. They rejected objective standards, personal persuasion over factual accuracy. That's exactly what the sophists did, and that's exactly what the Muslims are doing. They borrowed all of this stuff from their Greek books that they managed to get hold of. Focus on rhetoric over substance, winning arguments through eloquence and deceitful manipulation. Eloquence, we spoke about it earlier, the language of flowery language, prose and
Obama.
poetry. Yep. And speaking of, here they're using the sophist called Gorgias, the art of persuasion rather than seeking genuine knowledge. Teaching for profit, right? So these guys were paid by the king. The caliph paid people to write very smart lies, right? So there were mercenary motives rather than a pursuit of wisdom, as Plato criticized them for, right? They exploit ambiguity, right? Hiyal, ambiguous words, how to get out of contracts, how to say things ambiguously, clever wordplay and logical fallacies, ambiguous language to confuse the audience, as seen in Thrasymachus' defense of injustice in Plato's Republic. So with very poor reasoning, opposition to the Socratic method. So they reject Socrates' emphasis on questioning and clearly defining truth in favor of persuasive techniques with vague, woolly terms. Plato called them charlatans. They were morally flexible, right? Sophists like Callicles argued that might makes right, endorsing immoral positions if they served power. And we'll see that within Islam and Muhammad exactly. So this is deceit rather than ethical discourse. And of course, so look, it just goes on and on and on. This is all from Plato's Dialogues and Aristotle's Metaphysics. So this is the opposite of logic. It is the denial and the corruption of logic.
Yeah.
So this is what the Muslims are doing.
That's like without axioms. You take away the axioms and start arguing.
So dawah is propaganda. So dawah is a call, an invitation, but it is propaganda. It is pretension, right? Dawah, blah, blah, blah. And notice here, in the Abbasid dynasty, dawah was propaganda for a member of the Prophet's family, and propaganda for the imam who alone could give mankind good guidance. So you're allowed to propagandize, right? You're allowed to tell lies. You're allowed to use specious reasoning. You're allowed to make up stories as long as it benefits the Prophet's family, as long as it benefits Islam, and so on and so on and so on. In other words, your imam can lie to you, right? And they made a big deal of it. So under the Abbasid Caliphate, this was promoted as a very specific part of the culture. This was a practice that became part of the culture, integral to the culture, right? So now, go on.
Yeah, not now.
Yes, can do.
I'm listening.
No problem. Okay, so Dawaganda, theocratic empire. So the ideal theocratic state, according to Islam, and this is taken, they borrowed this from Plato's Republic. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but they basically took ideas from Plato's Republic, and Plato said, look, the perfect state has to be small because then everyone will conform, and that's a city state. And of course, they took this, but they said you can't have perfection. You just have one little perfect small state, and you got the whole world that needs to be perfect. So that's where jihad comes in. So that's how you spread the Sharia, the perfect law, to make everyone conform, blah, blah, blah. So the theocratic state is based on monotheism, right? And the whole organization responsible for attracting the greatest possible number of people to this idea and for giving power to their representatives. So the Muslims need very convincing, very persuasive people, not honest people, persuasive people, people who can do very good PR and lie to you to bring people to this idea of the perfect state, the caliphate, the Muslim caliphate. How can we attract the highest possible number of people to the Muslim caliphate, even if we have to lie to them, that's okay. And then this will give power to their representatives. This will give power to the caliph and the imams, as well as they need to develop propaganda for this purpose. And this is called dawah. So dawah is propaganda designed to attract people to the caliphate and to have those people give political power to the leaders so that the caliphate can then expand and go and do warfare, which is jihad. So they speak of this mission is propaganda, right? The dawah is one of the means of founding a new empire. The empire is the caliphate. So dawah, strictly speaking, is propaganda for founding an empire. All right, so Hiyal, okay, they speak of the Machiavellian tricks, Hiyal, to recruit new adherents and detach them from their religion to build the Muslim empire. Now, they call it Machiavellian tricks. Hiyal is Machiavellian tricks. Rahat Zaman is full of shit. That's what he is. Sorry, just reading his comments. Anyway, so Machiavellian. Machiavellianism is one of the traits in the dark triad model, along with psychopathy and narcissism. In other words, Hiyal breeds and feeds on narcissism in people. It feeds on psychopathy and encourages psychopathy. It encourages people to lose their morality. It encourages the worst human behaviors. It draws people who are the worst kinds of humans, the kinds of people who end up in prison, who become serial killers. Quite literally, this Hiyal then encourages and aligns with the kind of people who would be potentially serial killers. So in the field of personality psychology, Machiavellianism is a personality trait centered on manipulativeness, callousness, and indifference to morality. So saying that Hiyal is Machiavellian says it is evil. Yes?
I said, like, this is something that I talked about in my Season of Freedom, like the demons video, where I compared like demons to an unspecific kind of group, but I used a lot of photos of Yahya Sinwar and you know, what's his name? Yasser Arafat. So it's maybe not so non-specific, but I talked about that, like, why is Yahya Sinwar, who is famous for strangling Palestinians with his bare hands, got as far as he did? Because he's the ideal, like, like he does everything that is here, right? The psychopathy and narcissism and violence. Like, he is the top dog when it comes to those kind of characteristics. Like he would also
have you seen the photos of the new head of Syria? The guy that was head of HTS. Have you seen his eyes? He's got dead eyes. Yeah, Julani. Yeah, he's got the 1,000 yards stare. I mean, he's got the deadest eyes. I'm looking at this. I'm like, shit, that guy will kill you without thinking.
You know? You cannot be that. Like, you cannot be the top dog of this thing if you are not completely in. Like, you just can't. They judge you by how cruel you can be. Like, that's the measurement.
Yeah, exactly.
The crueler you are, the higher you climb.
And notice also, someone mentioned earlier that when you say the Shahada, right? They spoke about saying Shahada. Now, when you become a Christian, right? You accept God into your heart. No, I mean, blah, 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 whatever, right? You accept God into your heart and you decide, look, I'm going to try and live a moral life, right? You you try to purify yourself with the Holy Spirit, etc. Right? That's one kind of thing. But the Shahada is kind of a different concept. I know I didn't explain that very well, but that's fine. That's not the point. But Shahada is different. The Shahada is where you look at the loyalty. When you say Shahada, you give your loyalty to Allah. And that idea of loyalty, I can't remember the name offhand now, that is found in sections on commerce and trade in Islam, in sales, basically, in commerce. So in other words, technically you are selling your soul to Allah. Now, Rebecca, just fill in just connect the dots for me. You sell your soul. What does that tell you?
I mean, yeah, well, that's your
Who do you sell your
mythology.
soul to? Sorry?
That's your mythology. I'm saying that's your mythology, not mine.
Yeah, I
Not
understand.
gonna.
You sell your soul to Satan.
Yeah.
You sign a contract, you sell your soul to Satan. So Shahada, when you become a Muslim, technically you've sold your soul to Satan. That's because it's commerce. It's a sale, it's a contract. So that's a completely different idea to being loyal to something higher, a higher power, but this is you've sold your soul. And within the Western framework and the Christian framework, that is selling your soul to Satan. That's a completely different idea. Okay, moving on, we did that guy. Machiavellian, using clever but dishonest methods that deceive people so that you can win power or control. That's Hiyal. And related words and phrases: sly, devious, calculating, crafty, cunning, backdoor, calculating, cunning, devious. See, there's no positives here. This is all about manipulation and lying to win personal power, win benefit. It's for the caliphate. So let's have a look at permissible war crimes. All right. So this is in Sahih Muslim, right? So it says that when you lay siege to a fort and the besieged appeal to you for protection in the name of Allah and His Prophet, do not give them, right? Do not promise them safety or guarantee of safe passage in the name of Allah and Muhammad. Give them your own personal guarantee and the guarantee of your companions. It is a lesser sin that the security that given by you and your companions be disregarded. In other words, you break your oath. Right? You say, sure, if you guys lay down your weapons and come out, we'll let you go. That's fine.
Well, that's what the Julani is doing to the people, like the Alawites. A lot of them gave up their weapons. The Druze were like a few, but now like he went like they
Yeah,
now
and
they're being slaughtered. Like this is what he did. Like, and he's like arguing like he's so mad with the Druze like that they're not giving up their weapons. It's like, duh, they gave up their weapons and you're not going to protect them. You're going to slaughter them. Like,
yeah. So in other words, you can break your oath, but it's better that you break an oath you made in your name than one you make on the name of Allah and Muhammad. But so when you besiege a fort and the besieged want you to let them out in accordance with Allah's command, do not let them come out in accordance with Allah's command. Do so at your own command. So that, if you violate your oath, and you're probably going to, then it's better.
now I'm so curious. We should like go back and watch Julani's videos and see that like who is making how he's wording his promises to not to protect the minorities.
Yeah. So there you go. So let's have a quick look at heuristic versus dialectic. Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 10, pages 465. They speak of the Jadaliya, right? From Jadal, meaning controversy, which means dialectic. Now, technically, a dialectic is a method that you pursue to find the truth, right? Using logic, and you eliminate things and you move to the next thing, right? Process of elimination, whole Sherlock Holmes thing. But notice controversy here is more like strife, as in the Marxist dialectic. It's thesis, synthesis, and you're supposed to get, thesis, antithesis, you get it, blah, blah. It's more, there's a concept of strife, fighting, rather than finding truth. There's more conflict. The term here is conflict. So the dialectical method is a discussion between two or more people with different points of view about a subject, but they want to establish the truth through reasoned argumentation. Heuristic is an argument, and you want to successfully win your point regardless of whether you're right or wrong. You just want to win. You believe so strongly that you're right, you want to convince everyone else of it as well. So you're not searching for the truth, you just want to convince. So the four schools of fiqh, right, the four schools of jurisprudence, Hanbali, Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, and so on, they were not established on the four scholars that were necessarily the best. or necessarily the most knowledgeable, although in theory they are supposed to be absolutely knowledgeable, the best scholars, but they were considered to be the most persuasive. So the four schools are the ones who were the most persuasive in convincing people to join the caliphate. It's the ones with the best rhetoric, not the ones with the best logic or knowledge, not the ones who were most true. So in the original Republic, like Plato, the distinction is made between dialectic and heuristic. So the former is argument made in good faith, with the goal of finding and approaching, capturing the truth. The latter is argument as performance, right, with the goal of tearing down your opponent. That's all it is. It's made for TV drama. So, any comment?
Yeah. Now I just wonder if they have like more practical tips about how you carry your speech.
I'm
You know,
sure there's going to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know what I noticed they do? Like they talk with, like they carry, like they have presence, and what they do is just they break down the sentence into pauses, and then it's hard to like have the whole thing together because of pauses between them, and it kind of breaks your ability to understand what is the point, like from start to finish.
They have a lot of this kind of stuff. Remember the artificial embellishment of speech and all that? Even tajweed, the way they say the Quran, it's a whole method. It's a whole, everything is very stylistic, right? It's performance.
Yes, I kind of wonder like if they have this, like, you know, something practical.
I mean, I'm sure we can assume it's there. We can assume that the ones who are trained in this will have it. Okay, so Plato, according to Plato, the heuristic style did not constitute a method of argument, because to argue heuristically is to consciously use fallacious arguments. So Plato said, no, this is not factual, it's not logical, it's not even reasonable. This is a bunch of nonsense, right? It's simply using falsehood to win. Now, the philosopher Schopenhauer considered that only logic pursues truth. And for that, you have to approach with non-contradictory logic. You've got to use the three laws of logic, which would be the law of identity. A is A, man is man, woman is woman, cat is cat, dog is dog. Banana is not apple, right? Then there's the law of the excluded middle. Apple is not banana. Banana is not apple, right? You cannot be pregnant and not pregnant at the same time. Pick one. And of course, the law of, that's the law of the excluded middle. And then, of course, non-contradictory logic, right? You can't be a man and also a woman. Pick one. It's as simple as that. So for him, dialectic and sophistry and heuristic have no objective truth, but only the appearance. Again, it's for appearance's sake. It's performative. They do not seek truth, but victory. And that's what Islam wants, is victory, not truth. And this is all, the whole idea is built upon using these sophists, the Greek sophists. They took the philosophy of the Greek sophists and said, let's go to town with this stuff. So, artifacts.
But you know what I really hate about things today? It's like when you have like debates and things like that, those who host the debate, like they don't give, like they cooperate with that tactic. They don't care for anything. Like there are no axioms. There is no answer the question that you've been actually asked. It's no give like information that is relevant to the, like it's nothing. Like you can say whatever, you just stand there, say whatever you want, and that's it. You don't, and people cooperate with it. Like there is this vast like cooperation with that kind of doctrine of argumentation.
No, the sophistry. Look, I mean, at the risk of upsetting various people, but if you go to the medieval era, you start with Anselm and you work your way to Thomas Aquinas. They developed very strict, extremely rigorous methods of determining truth by utilizing logic. They took Aristotle's laws of logic, they expanded upon that to create a method called scholasticism to find truth. And when you go to, I have the most detailed analysis of Martin Luther's works and history on YouTube, period. I've got dozens of hours of Martin Luther, and I've still got to do a lot more. I'm only halfway through the series. I bought Martin Luther's works. I studied them for 4 years. I put together dozens of hours of Martin Luther's works. And the Protestants developed, because short version. The Protestants developed a form of scholasticism. Now, scholasticism was a Catholic innovation on logic to find truth. To understand, basically, you use propositional logic and you use careful process to find, and facts, propositions to find truth, right? Whereas from a historically, from a point of view of Protestants, they actually borrowed these methods from the Muslims to develop a method of heuristic as well, and they called it scholasticism. So the problem is that this method of winning arguments has pervaded even Western society. It's pervaded colleges, schools, it's everywhere. You see it in the woke. It's about sophistry, it's about winning, it's about screaming, it's about emotions, not about careful attention to fact, logic, and detail. It's not based on history, it's not based on carefully moving from one fact to the next in a chronological, logical order. So this has become widespread throughout society.
Okay, so because I almost can tell you that I've
after the advent of Martin Luther. No, he asked who were more violent, Protestants or Catholics. Historically, it's easily proven Protestants were far more violent. But that's a different topic. You can go to my channel, watch the videos. I go into pedantic detail on that. So, but yeah, so back to this topic. Yeah, question, Rebecca?
No, I just said I mean that I don't think I've ever seen a debate where you actually follow the rules of logic, right? Where it's an actual, I wanted to be in a debate club, and but I didn't know much about it, just for I remember trying, and then when I learned about what debate is, I was so disappointed about what it really was, because I realized it has it doesn't follow logic, it doesn't follow anything. It's just I've never seen somewhere where it does.
Look, following. Okay, so just to deviate on this. Okay, to follow just the three basic laws of logic, just Aristotle's three basic laws of logic, or laws of thinking, right? Laws of thought. Just to follow that would make a lot of arguments very short. So, for instance, can a man be a woman? Well, according to logic, the law of non-contradiction, no.
Then make better.
Finished. What?
Yeah, but choose better themes about things that you can actually argue about, which there are.
Right, I understand, but that argument ends. If you apply logic, that argument doesn't even get off the ground. The problem is that what happened was you had the introduction of a philosophy, right? Of a philosophy called nominalism. And that's a longer discussion. That's a very detailed discussion. But it's a philosophy that means that words are just labels you slap on things at your convenience. So there's no, for instance, category such as woman. A man can become a woman because there's no objective truth, right? So to put a label on something, there's no categories called woman. There's no category called dog. That whale, you see, the dolphin in the pool, that could be a dog too, you see? Because there's no categories, there's only individual things, and that thing defines itself because it's your truth. It's a completely subjective, completely relativistic denial of basic logic. All of these philosophies designed to just deny logic. And once you apply logic, a lot of things become very simple. There can't be multiple right answers for a lot of categories of problems. There's only one right answer, everything else is wrong. There's only one answer to what is 1 + 1. That answer is 2. There's not a million answers. But now everyone defines his gender his own way, you see? So that's to do with nominalism, because words don't have any meaning, except that the words they use always have meaning. It's crazy. But it's a misapplication and a corruption of philosophy.
Well, yeah, but even, the classic debate that you learn, should we wear a uniform to school or not? That's multifactorial. You can use logic really and have a real debate there, just because it's you have to set up a goal, you have to look at.
This could be preference based. If it's preference based, and but also you can then go and look at evidence. You can look at historical evidence. So do students that have been doing this, 10 years later down the line, how is their discipline? How do they end up in prison more likely? Do they end up as drunks, etc.? And so on and so. You can look at data. But then of course people have learned to lie about data too. So yeah. So then they've destroyed truth.
Yeah, but then it's more complicated and it's more interesting, and you bring and there is a real argument there to have, you know.
Yeah. Can I mention something? This Rahat Zaman, he's mentioned the word Islamists. Okay, there never
There is
have
no
been
such
Islamists.
thing.
There will never be Islamists. There are no Islamists. Islamist is a fictional word. You may as well come and say those ISIS are not real Muslims. Those weren't real Muslims. That's not real Islam. Those are Islamists doing Islamism. And do me a favor, send me a copy of the Islamist Quran. If you have a copy of the Islamist Quran, please send it to me. I'd love to read it and see what's different, because those are Muslims. Okay, because well-meaning idiots are using fake invented terms to try to disassociate jihad from Islam. Jihad is the core of Islam. It's an obligatory requirement in Islam. These are Muslims. Call them what they are. Stop lying for Islam. Because if you're going to give it the wrong name and the wrong idea and the wrong concept, you are lying and perpetuating the problem. You are misdirecting attention from the truth. These are Muslims. The difference is rukhsa and azima, strictness and lenience, strictness and expedience. That's the difference. Muslims all do jihad. All Muslims are required to do jihad. Violent jihad is obligatory. It is an obligatory action that must be done. It cannot be avoided. They must do murder. Holy murder, jihad, must be done. And the rest have to assist in various ways. So
All right.
there
So
are Islamists. Yeah?
So I have an argumentation here, argument point. I'd say like there is, I would actually distinguish like a specific case where you'd want to distinguish between two kind of populations, and what that is when there are people in.
Muslims
If,
distinguish using rukhsa and azima.
so I'll say like when it's Muslims that are actually ex-Muslims but are in the closet because of the environment they're in, and real Muslims.
Then they're apostates, but secret apostates.
Right, but you cannot do that. But so you have to use like a
No, the
euphemism.
term
Like,
Islamist implies. It's
I
like
know, but I say like it's not that, but that would be a useful term to have.
So
Like
by
those who
Islamist,
are are you an ex-Muslim in the closet, or you
in,
are a real Muslim?
yeah, no. I have to ask: is someone who promotes the word Islamist, is he a closet fifth columnist working for the enemy? Is he trying to
So
promote a
this,
lie because he's trying to help the Muslims? You see,
I'm
because these are
actually
so
because
these are
yeah,
all
that
Muslims are politically active. Islam is a political ideology. It is defined as a political ideology. It is optional. Religion is an optional definition in the definition of Islam. So, but moving on. So, yeah, I mean, when we use the wrong terms, you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. When you have the wrong ideas, you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. If you ask all the wrong questions, you're going to come to the wrong answers. So it's like saying that's not real Islam, that's not real Muslims, that's just aiding and abetting. That's all. That's all it's doing. It's just perpetuating the problem. So that's lying for Muslims, lying for Islam. And I got to ask yourself, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Well, you're part of the problem. So expedient, right? A trick, a stratagem, a way to achieve a particular end. False or insincere behavior, artifice. It's an integral part of what Muslims are doing with Hiyal, artifice. Right? The word comes up. Now, artifice, deception or trickery, right? Made up to achieve an end, deceiving, a stratagem. So these words are used to describe, as we saw through these other resources, to describe Hiyal, to describe what the Muslims are doing, crafty or subtle deception, stratagems, contrivance, trickery, guile, craftiness. You can see over and over subterfuge, deception, deceit, duplicity, artful contrivance, right? A clever trick, right? We've seen all these. So here you've got artifice, a crock of shit, a pack of lies, fiction to stretch the truth, bad faith, falsification, myth to perjure. So when these words are used to describe what the Muslims are doing, their methods, adab al-jadal, hiyal, these are not good terms in any way. The connotations are strictly negative, right? These are entirely negative statements. Okay, let me see. So now we have to look at this text called the Ihya Ulum al-Din, and we're going to read what the greatest scholar of Islam has to say. After Muhammad, this is apparently like the greatest scholar of Islam, and we have to see what he has to say about Islam's doctrine of lying. Any comment before I go on? I'm just going to jump into this text. Yeah. Also, for those who aren't aware, I spent 11 years living in the Middle East. I worked a lot of that time in national defense. I've been to all of the, shall we say, dysfunctional areas. I've seen the dysfunction. I've seen the destruction Islam brings. If you think it's not coming to your town, it's coming. If you allow Islam to spread, what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Iraq, what happened everywhere else, it is coming to your town if you don't stop it. What happened on October 7th, that's going to become normal. That'll be Tuesday in Paris. That'll be Tuesday in Brussels. I've seen this stuff with my own eyes. It is horrific. So yeah, I think accuracy counts, right? Now, I just want to lead with this for a moment. Curse when lawful. To curse means to drive away something from God. This applies to things which are already distant from God, such as infidelity, oppression. And they have very specific meanings of how they mean these words. It is lawful to curse the unbelievers and the oppressors with such words as are permitted by the Sharia. And of course, curse especially upon a people as curse upon the Jews and upon the Christians. So Muslims are permitted to, and in fact encouraged to curse you because you already, Allah hates you. You are far from Allah. Allah has rejected you. So Muslims must also curse you to drive you even further away. Okay, yeah. Okay, any comment before I step to the next thing?
Yeah.
And of course, they're not going to tell you, hey, we're cursing you, but yeah, that's what they do.
By the way, like you said several times, right? And this is something we started with. This is so ingrained in their culture; it's part of them already. A lot, if like I'm sure most Muslims will not know or ever read those things that you're talking about, but it is ingrained in them.
Yeah, it's part of the culture. It's been in the culture for 1,000 years. It's ingrained at them in them for 1,000 years. It's implicit. It's implicit, not always explicit. I mean, there are sources in Arabic that I can't read that are probably far worse than this. And in fact, 60% of the Muslim sources are probably in Urdu. So you've got to go to India and Pakistan to find the rest of the sources that are not in Arabic. The majority of the works are in Urdu. And there are some things there that I've discovered that, yeah, aren't so good, but they're not translated. So yeah, so not everything's in Arabic. So yeah, so now notice they're going to translate these things so nicely. False speaking is permissible in some cases. Yeah, in all cases. Trust me, every day, whole day, all the time, for everything. Lying is permissible. Okay. Sometimes lying, false speaking, sometimes lying becomes compulsory. Sometimes it's compulsory. So, oh, okay. False speaking is better than speaking the truth. Now, remember, this will echo exactly what we said earlier. So, now, for instance, to say falsehood in battle or to compromise between two parties. Now, we can ask ourselves, do we have a difference with Muslims? Yes. Do Jews have a difference with Hamas? Yes, of course. Do Jews have a difference with the Muslim Brotherhood? Certainly. But to compromise between two parties, to settle a difference, false speaking is lawful. To settle a disagreement, it is lawful and in fact obligatory for Muslims to lie, because the whole point of their form of argumentation is to win. That's the whole point of adab al-jadal, is to win. So all of this rolls together. So the Prophet did not allow false speaking except in 3 cases, to bring a compromise between two parties. Would you like to compromise with Hamas? Well, they'll lie to you because it's permissible. In any argument, in any form of disagreement with Muslims, they may lie to you. It is lawful, it is obligatory. He who settles disputes between two parties is not a liar. So if you settle a dispute with lies, according to Allah, you're not a liar. Isn't that an interesting set of morals? Yes, Rebecca, you seem to have a thought.
No, I'm just thinking like here's the problem, the real problem. Okay, as far as I can see it. Most people, I feel like, know what the truth is about Islam. But like a vast majority of them are like straight cowards, right? So they just push things under the, like they just like swipe things under the rug. How do you deal with that? Like it's like at some point here, I'm thinking, well, obviously it's interesting, right? It's very, very interesting, like because of the scope and the depth and the like how much they went into lying. But you only need to like get to know Muslims for a little bit to understand that they are compulsive liars.
Yeah, it's part of the culture. It's normal. It's normal.
So it's something that people know, like in their hearts. I feel like I could tell something is wrong with Islam when I was a little child, just from looking, like just from observing, right? I didn't know anything. I didn't understand anything. I just looked at how they behave, like how they, like just that very small, just like something is wrong there, there's this intuition, and yet
But you
no
get a
matter
sense.
how much you get a sense, right? So everything else is confirmation.
Yeah.
And yet with all that confirmation, right, at a point where like I don't see people that are, I don't feel like people are moving out of cowardness necessarily as much as we need them to, in order to be able to do something about it before it's too late, before the price is too high. And that is something that's frustrating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you'll find it. We'll go through. We'll read more of this, and you'll start to see it becomes very explicit. It goes from the
No,
general to
yeah.
the specific.
Oh no, I
see.
say it's gonna be super. I don't think it's not gonna be specific. I'm just saying, like, in a sense,
Yeah.
like,
No,
you
I
know
see.
what
I
I'm
triggered
saying?
someone called A Hammer, who's busy making up lies. Anyway, so moving on. Now, the lie which he speaks. Now, the Prophet said, Muhammad said, every lie of a man is recorded, but the lie which he speaks in war is not recorded because war is a strategy. So jihad is obligatory upon all Muslims. Jihad is at war with everyone because we're in the Dar al-Harb. We're in the house of war. They live in the house of Islam. So therefore, a lie told for the purposes of jihad is not recorded as a lie. Allah doesn't record those lies, so it's not a sin. So the lie which is spoken to settle the matters between two contending parties. When you're in a debate with a Muslim, you're contending with him. When you are at war with Muslims, you're contending with them. When you're trying to settle a disagreement, you're contending with them. Therefore, it's okay for them to lie, because the lie which is spoken to settle between two contending parties is not written. Allah doesn't see that as a lie. So Muslims can lie to you, in other words, for everything, because they disagree with us over everything. So now the lie which is spoken to please a wife is not recorded. You can lie to your wife. There is sin in every falsehood, but there is no sin in that falsehood which benefits a Muslim or removes a harm from a Muslim. There is no sin in the lie that benefits a Muslim or removes a consequence, a harm from a Muslim. That should
Now, if
frighten.
you use like good old logic, like the old school one, it kind of, there is like an implicit statement here that says women are not Muslim.
Women are not fully human.
Like they're
Yeah.
not Muslim.
Yeah, they're property. They're not of an equal.
Yeah.
A woman is worth half a man, a Christian is worth a third of a Muslim, a Zoroastrian and other pagans are worth a 15th of a Muslim.
Yeah, it says like a falsehood which benefits a Muslim, and it is in the context of a wife. So that means the wife is not a Muslim, in a sense.
She's not a full human. She
Right.
is sinful and she's property. So it's kind of,
Right.
I mean, so the Prophet said, he who commits fornication will keep it secret with the secrecy of Allah, because to disclose an obscene act is also an obscene act. So doing the deed is not the bad thing, but to tell people about it, to speak about it. I saw Jamal diddling a 5-year-old is the actual sin. That's the wrongdoing. Not that Jamal did it, because if you just kept your mouth shut, You see, because when you hide a sin of a fellow Muslim, Allah will hide your sins. You'll see this as we go. So if you see Jamal diddling the 3-year-old and you keep your mouth shut to protect Jamal, Allah will keep his mouth shut when it comes to your turn for judgment in paradise. And you'll go, you kept your mouth shut, so I'll pretend I didn't see your sins, buddy. Off you go. Have a nice life with your 72 huris. Do you understand? That's how Islamic eschatology works. That's the morality here. To disclose evil is evil because it brings embarrassment and shame, dishonor and shame upon Islam. So keep your mouth shut. That's how that works. So every man should sometimes save his life and his honor, taking recourse to falsehood. So if a Muslim needs to save his life, his property, or his honor, his respect, he should take recourse to lying. And if an inquiry is made to you about a secret thing of your brother Muslim, you can deny it to preserve his honor. So the terrorist who murdered 3 people, 12 people, 15 people, have you seen it? No, I haven't. You see, it's legal to lie to protect other Muslims because the worst sin of a Muslim is better than just being a kafir. Unfortunately, that's the logic as it works here, right? If harm is caused more than benefit in the case of speaking the truth, then avoid speaking the truth. If the consequence of speaking the truth is there'll be, I don't know, your fellow Muslim will go to prison or something, then don't do it. So understand, and uttering a dual word, now that's important. A deceptive word with double meanings, ambiguous meanings, saves you from falsehood. So lying will save you from lying. So they have different degrees of deception. Saying ambiguous, sophist things will save you from outright lying, because they distinguish between outright telling a lie and telling something that's ambiguous. You know, a hammer obviously has a little bee in his bonnet, and so yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So anyway, Hammer, go to my series on Martin Luther. You'll find that Martin Luther was a psychopath. You've been lied to about good old Martin Luther. And
I don't think he's talking about like historical Roman Catholics. I think he's talking about what's happening right now.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
Well, I don't think he's lying. Like, there are a lot of, like the Pope had a ceremony with a kafia on Jesus.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of those things, but there's some of the things he was saying that were just, I'm not even Catholic, so yeah.
I don't see everything, but like.
He needs to go and learn about Martin Luther, because Martin Luther is one of the sickest individuals to ever live. Honestly, he needs to go study. Martin Luther was disgusting, utterly so. As I said, I've got over 30 hours of Martin Luther on my channel right now. Seriously, from his own works. The most absolutely horrific man ever. Okay, so now they speak of backbiting. Okay, we'll briefly talk about that because that goes into what's called ghibba, which is slander. Okay, so let me see if I have anything additional on that topic. Yeah, okay, so that's enough of that. I'll cancel this and we'll go to this one. So now I've got to go to namima. So we'll have a look at something else here. Right, so this defines the morality of Islam. And yeah. I didn't say Martin Luther King, I said Martin Luther. He's one of the most dishonest people you've ever met or heard of. So now notice, tale-bearing, okay? Not this definition, tale-bearing, namima. Tale-bearing, as they mentioned here, is not limited to that, but rather consists of revealing anything whose disclosure is resented. And this takes us to slander. Now, in Western law, slander is to tell a lie about someone. In Islam, slander is to tell the truth about something or someone that they don't want told. It's as simple as that. So to slander a Muslim is to tell the truth. To slander a Westerner is to lie. A complete inversion. Your thoughts there?
Yeah.
So I'll go back up here and let's go to ghibba. So need to look at slander and ghibba. Okay, if you notice something good, it is sunnah to mention it. It's habit, it is custom, it is example to mention it. But if you notice something bad, it is unlawful to mention it. This is slander. To notice something bad about a Muslim and to talk about it is slander. Okay, this is in the context of the deceased, but it goes on to other examples as well. So slander, ghibba. Slander means to mention anything concerning a person that he would dislike. Not something that's untrue, just something you wouldn't like told. So,
Yeah,
but of course,
but it
right,
also depends on the audience. It's not exactly like
well, because
I think a better translation would be like something that presents you in a bad light.
not necessarily, because saying that
No.
"Are you stealing money from the till," that's true, but that presents a Muslim in a bad light, which brings
Yeah.
dishonor of Islam. So therefore, keep silent about it.
Yeah,
Lie
but
about
if the audience would be somebody who would like say, "Oh, this is so cool, you stole from them," then it's, you know, it. I think it depends on whether it's perceived as negative or positive, rather than.
Islam has a different, I mean, as Westerners, we think in a very specific method that's typically very logical and has a certain moral calculus to it. In Islam, they don't share that. They don't share those ideas. Well, superficially, they might. They use the same words, they use them in opposite ways. And they'll use them in a way that suits you now because they've got eyes on them, you know, but later turn your back and things change. So you can't assume that. So, for instance, slander is bad, right? Except there are 6 reasons permitting slander. Do you want to slander those Jews, those nasty Jews? Do you want to slander those horrible Christians? Do you want to slander anyone you don't like? Well, yeah, go ahead and knock yourself out. Slander is fine as long as Muslims are doing it. See, you can do slander. And what does slander mean? You can say, well, things that are untrue too. Understand? So that's the difference here. They have completely inverted morality. It's completely upside down morality. And that's what that is. Right. So ghibba, we've done that. And now I've got to go to this section. So notice here within the Sharia, if you look at this index, you have lying, a chapter on lying. You have unlawful lying, which is fine because the Sharia contradicts itself. It goes against itself. You have permissible lying, and then you have obligatory lying. So, they have lying that's obligatory. And notice circumventing those forbidding the permissible. Like, for instance, Israel is currently forbidding Hamas from murdering all the Israelis. So what must they do? They must circumvent those forbidding the permissible. Right? I have a channel. I talk about Islam, and I also have multiple hours reading from. Never mind. I shouldn't trigger old hammer anymore. But you're welcome to come on and have a discussion with me in the future. And you might be shocked to find out that your icon has the dirtiest morality you've ever seen. But anyway, so you've got obligatory lying. They're permitted to lie, and they will lie. So let's have a look at that. And notice that if you can also give a misleading impression, and there are alternatives to lying outright. So you see they have alternatives to outright lying. So let's go find section R8.2. And then there's this section, which is very interesting. Explaining the Quran by personal opinion. Muslims love to come tell you, but the Quran means, and this section states bluntly, a lay Muslim that explains the Quran from his opinion is wrong. It's not ambiguous. It says he's wrong. His opinion has no value. You must get it from a scholar. You can ignore every lay Muslim, but of course they lie to you because, well, that's what they have to do. So let's find R8.0 and look at the discussions on lying. Any comment or question before I go further?
No.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. Notice it also says he who settles disagreements between people to bring about a good, anything that benefits Islam, or says something commendable, is not a liar. So these are repeated across the Sharia manuals. Okay, permissible lying, and let's see here, permissible lying, right? The Prophet permitted untruth in settling disagreements or smoothing over differences. So the UN went and had a little chat with Giuliani, and things were going to be awesome. He lied to them because that's how you smooth over things, right? So this is an explicit statement that lying is permissible for a given interest, right? and we can find what kind of lies are lawful, right? Speaking is a means to achieve objectives. Now Hammer is definitely telling lies, but yeah. So sorry about that, but that annoys me because that's a topic I've also covered at length. I have a huge amount. I've 500 slides on the topic of Martin Luther, and you've got to read Martin Luther's own works. It is disgusting.
Martin Luther is very similar to Muhammad in a way. Like he tried to charm the people that listened to him, and then when it didn't work, like he
Martin
would
Luther absolutely hated Jews. I mean, he absolutely hated the Jews. And you've got to read Martin Luther's works. I bought his entire works. I have Martin Luther's entire works. I spent 4 years reading it. And Martin Luther is the Muhammad of Germany. That man is disgusting. Sorry.
You see, right? He's like Muhammad. Is very similar.
On my channel, I called him the Muhammad of Germany. I've got 30 plus hours just covering Martin Luther, and I'm only halfway done.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther permitted lying. He permitted murder of the disabled. The Nazis loved him because all the stuff, like the whole policies that the Nazis implemented against the Jews, the first 10 or so steps were taken from Martin Luther's works. Martin Luther gave them the template for how to treat the Jews. And then the last couple, Hitler added a couple of his own innovations at the end, but the step-by-step process came directly from Martin Luther's works. The man was vile. He was violent, incredibly so. It's shocking how, when you read about Muhammad, what Muslims tell you, and then you read the actual Islamic works, and you go, these two are completely different. Same with Martin Luther. It's shocking. So anyway, but that's off topic. So speaking, and notice, we see Ghazali. Oh my God, Ghazali's back. He says, speaking is a means to achieve objectives. So when it is possible to achieve these Islamic objectives by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. And if it is obligatory to attain that goal, then it is obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. And then they go on and talk about different forms of lying. It is not unlawful to lie when these aims can only be attained through lying. Islam permits lying. It's blatant. It is more precautionary religiously to employ words that give a misleading impression. So when you're not lying outright, then deceive.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Now notice they speak of deceiving as the outward meaning of the words deceives the hearer. You see? So yeah, see? The outward meaning deceives the hearer. They are speaking of deception over and over and over. Okay? So you are entitled to lie. Yeah. If telling the truth is going to be bad, then you're entitled to lie. Muslims are entitled to lie. You are entitled to lie. That's what it says. So I'll go back to the slides and we can finish this off. Any comments or thoughts on that?
Just thinking, like, I bet they can also lie about being Muslim if the situation is like.
There's literally nothing they can't lie about. Everything.
Wait.
Literally everything.
I cannot hear you for some reason. Is it me?
Sorry. You can literally lie about everything. Testing. Can the audience hear me? Give me a 1 if they can. So, but I think largely speaking, I mean, hopefully I've made my point. Testing. Does the audience hear me? Testing. Does the audience hear me? Yeah, they're hearing me. I'm getting a 1. So, some dude, like I said, I have dozens of hours on Luther on my channel. Check them out. You'd love it. Man, you'd see how you've been lied to about Martin Luther. See, now Hammer's lying again. He did not write the book on the Jews. Another lie. Fascinating stuff. I know someone has got an original copy. Yeah.
I cannot hear.
Testing. Okay. Must be you. Yeah. Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3, speaking. Rahat Zaman, that is false. That's not a rare scenario. Those are very common scenarios.
Yeah, well, I cannot.
I don't Martin Luther, dude. You gotta read Martin
Luther.
Can you?
I don't know. I cannot hear. I cannot hear at all. Is it something on computer went weird?
So yeah, maybe testing, 1, 2, 3.
1 sec.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, back.
Back.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
don't know
good.
why.
Yeah. So the reason I used Ghazali, notice here about the book, Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is unquestionably the greatest theologian of Islam, right? They just praise this guy. He's Islam's foremost authority. He is the proof of Islam. He was the only Muslim, it says here, to be called the Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam, the decisive argument of Islam. He was a mujaddid, a renewer of the faith, which is someone that comes along once a century, according to a prophecy supposedly by Muhammad that says once a century someone will come along to restore the faith of the ummah, right? And he refuted the philosophy of Ibn Sina. He demonstrated that Aristotelian ethics is incompatible with Islamic ethics. In other words, logic is incompatible with Islam. So they are entirely relativistic. So, and one of the greatest renewers of the faith in history, he's the Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam. This is Egypt today, right? He is the proof of the Islamic religion. His life is kept in line with the saying of the Prophet, saying that we will get. So this guy is very, very important in Islam. His ideas shaped Sunni ideology. He is the Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam. He is the greatest scholar and thinker in Muslim history. Do you understand? That's why I picked this particular guy. He was a Muslim saint. He became one of the most famous scholarly authorities in the whole Islamic world. And he is the foremost Islamic scholar, right, according to this particular book and in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And he was a prominent and influential philosopher and blah, blah, blah. So the stuff that he wrote that we've just read that are corroborated in the Sharia, he's one of the greatest theologians. He's not some rando. This man is considered the greatest scholar with the broadest understanding of Islam after Muhammad himself. So, yeah. So, he's acclaimed as the most influential Muslim after the Prophet Muhammad. Do you understand how important this guy is? So the words that he's writing about lying, these are not just casual things, okay? So you can forego lying in every case where it is not legally obligatory. So there's obligatory lying, and if you want, you can not lie obligatorily, right? And when a person's swearing an oath includes the expression, Insha'Allah, if Allah wills, before finishing the oath is not broken if he intends for it to provide for exceptions. If you say Inshallah, you can break the oath and you don't have to care because it's fine. You can lie. Do you understand? There are all these tricks. So we're nearly done. We've just got a handful of slides and we are done.
Wow, that's like so important to know those things. I also thought it's like a catch-22, Like imagine you have a problematic area and you want to maybe allow the one righteous person in Sodom to get away with something. Islam makes hermetically sure that there would be no one. You know what I'm saying?
Not quite. Tell me, explain again.
How do so somebody from the Muslim culture, let's say, right? Let's say that you like the boats coming in and you're trying to understand what's the right thing to do, drown the boats or individually ask who is in the boat and then drown people individually as needed. But this is a catch-22, the religion has a catch-22 built in where you have no way but to drown the whole boat.
Yeah, these are called legal
loopholes. So you it forces you to drown the whole boat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No. So yeah, you can do that. So yeah, you can. So Islam allows you to break all oaths. Remember I said in the beginning, any oath, any promise, any contract, any agreement can be broken. It permits breaking any and all oaths. There is nothing, and I need to stress this, there's literally nothing, not a single thing in Islam that is sacrosanct. Nothing. There's zero.
Yeah, but it's like but it also means like, you know, unless there are the few that like became ex-Muslim and fought against Islam like actively, like there is no way to know
Yes.
whether or not, like when they're in a group, there is no way to know if somebody is salvageable or not. So like you have to drown the whole boat. Like there is no asking or like that's what
Yeah.
it meant. Like that's
Yeah.
a catch-22.
Is a
Like you're
Muslim really?
trapped.
Is a Muslim really your ally? Is he really an ex-Muslim? Is she really an ex-Muslim?
Like, but that's the thing. If somebody like did it on their own, let's say, and I could that some ex-Muslims on YouTube, not all of them, I believe, by the way. I think some of them are like some sort of a controlled position, but like let's say like a good some I really do believe like they're ex-Muslim, like genuinely are. Like Ayan Hiyal, you believe she's an ex-Muslim, right?
Say again?
Like Ayan Hiyal, you know?
What hear you? Sorry, let me just turn up my volume. Sometimes your voice drops out and I miss the words you're saying. It's like the audio just drops.
You know?
Okay, try again. Yeah.
Ayan
Hiyal. No,
yeah.
I trust her. I think she's legit. I trust her.
Right. So here's the thing, like, but in a situation of a boat, right? You cannot trust anyone on the boat.
No.
You cannot, like, even if they are an Ayan Hiyal style person, right? Like it's a catch-22 situation with Islam, where in that case they can say whatever they want. Like there is no way.
Yes.
Basically, you have to drown the boat. You have to drown the boat. Like it's everyone.
I mean, there are Muslims that have claimed to become ex-Muslims, and then they go on a killing spree later, or something like that. You get these.
Right.
That's happened. You just don't know. There's no way to verify, unless you have someone who's extremely expert. What about Ridvan Edemir? I would think he is a genuine convert. I mean, he joined the Orthodox Church, but again, you don't really know. But I would say that he seems to have become. Although, look, I would say that I would be a little skeptical of his knowledge of Sharia, right? For instance, he will talk about stuff, but doesn't really. I've never seen him quote the Sharia. He quotes Hadith, he quotes the Quran, but doesn't actually go into the Sharia. I go into the Sharia in depth. So his knowledge is in that sense limited of the Sharia itself, but he knows the other sources extremely well. But that doesn't cast doubt on his authenticity as an ex-Muslim. I think that is. Even there's a guy called Christian Prince. Sorry, everyone always tells me Christian Prince knows the Sharia very well. He's got his certificate or PhD in the Sharia. He studied it. I've seen Christian Prince do exactly zero on all the videos I've watched over the years on Christian Prince. I've seen him do exactly zero on the Sharia. Nothing, nada, zip, zero. Everyone says he does the Sharia. I'm like, I'm waiting for it.
But he doesn't claim to be an ex-Muslim.
No, exactly. But sorry,
he's not an ex-Muslim. He's Christian.
Yeah, but everyone says he does. He knows the Sharia. You're right. Everyone says he knows the Sharia. He does the Sharia, and I haven't seen it. So
no, I saw.
I have questions about things here and there, but he does the Quran. He does the Hadith.
He does the Quran, the Hadith. You're right. He doesn't do the Sharia.
Yeah. He'll do some scholarly writings, but I don't know if it's ijma.
Yeah, but people don't know it's not. People think the Hadith and the Quran are the Sharia.
No, I mean, to be honest, you can take the Quran, throw it away. You don't need it anymore. It's pretty irrelevant. You've got the Sharia.
Yeah. But this is what people focus on. Like, I know what you're saying. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think people know that it's not. It's like they don't understand like what Sharia is.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that. It's ijma, but that's a.
But I don't think he ever said it himself, to be honest.
Yeah, no, but everyone. Yeah, true. But everyone tells me he knows the Sharia.
Like I watch him, and I don't think he ever like said anything about.
I mean, the guy's a genius.
He always says like Hadith and Quran. I think he's very like honest. I think people don't understand, and then they misrepresent him.
Everyone says he does the Sharia. I'm hearing this a lot, and I'm like, I go look and I go check, and I'm like, where? So
like I never, but I also never heard him say anything like it. I don't remember him uttering the word Sharia.
Okay. You're right. Well, yeah. So I mean, these are some things, right? Just So he's not an ex-Muslim. He's Christian, right? Then I guess.
Yeah, he never was a Muslim.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't know that. I wasn't sure. I don't really follow him stuff, but I used to watch a lot of his videos, and especially when people were talking about some of the stuff, watch this, and I'm like, okay, just regular stuff. Yeah, but the things for the most part, there are Muslims that are very good at deception. Some are very open. Actually, Muslims are very good at gaslighting. That said, there are ex-Muslims that you don't know, you can't know. You just have
But
no idea.
okay, so here's the thing. I like with Ridvan. I know him, right?
Mhm.
I know. I'm certain he's an ex-Muslim.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah,
But there are things that they're just part of the culture. It's really hard to get rid of,
I agree. I agree. Certain
right? So
philosophy.
like,
Yes.
yeah.
No, I'd agree there. Yeah, just to finish the last couple of slides. Look, everything that I tend to talk about. Look, I mean, I didn't grow up in a seminary. You know, I came from a background where people have tried to kill me, and I've had to stay alive. So that's a little different. You know, and I used to make sure that you know, basically crazy jihadis didn't blow things up and kill people. That was my job. So I tend to be on the confrontational side. You know, I'm not exactly all meek and mild, and I'm alive because
Yeah.
I have a few skills. But yeah, so I tend to be annoyed at things that are clearly untrue. You know, when I've got all of the evidence and I can work through that, and I tend to want to be in people's faces, and that's generally, unfortunately, is part of my personality, I guess. But I want to be very blunt and direct with people that when you think through something badly, you're going to come up with bad answers. You're going to go down the wrong road. You've got to be very careful about your terms, your meanings. Have all the facts. You've got to use the correct terminology. The Muslims have terminology. We need to understand it according to their way of thinking, not ours. First, walk in their
Right.
shoes before you start misunderstanding. Um, this hadith here verifies what I previously said. It says if you take an oath, but later you find something better, then just do penance, say Allah, I'm sorry, and then do what is better. Break your oath. It's allowed. It's permitted. They've got loads of stuff like this. So he took an oath, found another thing better, and then yeah, just expiate. In other words, just do penance. I'm sorry, Allah, I didn't mean to. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. And then break your oath. See? There's no penalty. There's no moral penalty. They speak of the oath of imprecation, which gives a husband the possibility of accusing his wife of adultery without legal proof. Why? Because you want to get rid of her, right? Without his becoming liable for the punishment prescribed for this, and the possibility of denying the paternity of a child born by the wife. That's his, because he doesn't want to pay, doesn't want to pay for the kids. So he makes up this lie, legal lie, telling your wife to get lost. So a man accused his wife of committing illegal sexual intercourse, and there's the oath of li'an, and they get separated. And so then the husband can repudiate the child and the wife and say, well, you guys can go live in poverty and die, and I'm going to keep my money. Thank you very much. Because Islam is a religion of peace. Warm, yellow peace, as far as I can tell. And yeah, then we've spoken about usury, right? And we've spoken about that. And offenses committed under the rule of necessity, they speak of necessity, darura, also known as ittirar, necessity. Yeah, but I had to do it because it was necessary. Oh, yeah, you had to because you felt it was necessary. Well, then it can be excused without any form of punishment. They can get out of it's a get out of jail free card for any moral transgression. This is Islam. And then the final two slides, muddarat, right? What they call taqiyya. It's treating others in a friendly manner, right? While concealing your true attitude towards them. And that attitude is hatred. They define it here. They are those who died after spending their lives waging war against the nafs, okay? They are martyrs. We covered that before, right? So even if you die in your own bed, you are a shahid. You are treated as if you were someone who died in jihad, right? You're treated as if you had been killed fighting alongside the Prophet, right? He declares martyrs those who in their lifetime practiced taqiyya. So when Muslims practice taqiyya, they are being honored for it. Allah
But
rewards
to
them.
be honest, like honestly, they do a lot of work. Like they literally paved the way to like jihad to be possible. Like they are the first seeds they practiced taqiyya all their lives, and people are like, wow, they were like consistent all their life. They never showed anything else. It wasn't that like I knew this Muslim person, like I hear it a lot, right? I know those Muslim people who are always nice to me, never did anything. Yes, they could practice taqiyya all of their lives, right? And then people are like, okay, so I met this person, but they don't know, like, that was a taqiyya. Like, it was taqiyya, lifelong taqiyya. They died as martyrs because they did lifelong taqiyya, and they literally paved the way to the Islamists versus Muslims narrative, you know?
So they open the door. These are the people who open the door for the jihadis to come in, for the violent jihadis to come in. These are the people that infiltrate. These are the people that become politicians in your country. And they start to change the laws. They become news. They join the news. They become judges. They become lawyers. They start to agitate politically. They start to.
No, but I would say it's like even more sophisticated than that, because more than anything, you need those Muslims that do absolutely nothing.
Muslims are
Absolutely
not allowed
nothing.
to do absolutely nothing. They're not allowed to oppose, because then they become a hypocrite and an apostate. So they're not
What do you
allowed to
mean
oppose.
oppose? They're not going to oppose, but
They
nobody's
can't.
like people don't see absence, they see actions. They will
look,
never
Muslim-
oppose.
Allah threatens those who don't act, so they have to at least pay zakat. Zakat funds the jihad, right?
Yeah, but nobody sees that.
Exactly,
I'm
but
saying
Allah does.
but so if every Muslim you know promoted some sort of law that helps Islam, right? Or did something like that, like tracing back, you can say, okay, they did something behind the scenes. Then you cannot like genuinely say, well, I know Muslims like they were nice to me all of their lives. Well, if you have people who do taqiyya, real taqiyya the whole time, right, and they do zakat, right, they get like, you cannot trace them back at all, even looking back, and it really does open the door of, okay, somebody is nice.
Maybe, but then why does he call himself a Muslim? Because then, if he's a nice Muslim that's really nice to you, then he could be a
No, they
liar.
are because they are cooperating with it. They would never like oppose.
Yeah, they're not
But people
revealing.
don't know. But people don't notice lack of opposition. That's what I'm saying.
Of course, yes, yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So they're not going to stand up and oppose at all.
Notice there's a Muslim called Muhammad Afridi who's being rather crude with his language in the chat. Now, for the audience as well, you need to understand that I can show this as well. It's not hard to do so.
Do we need to show it to demonstrate, or?
No, that's fine.
Should I block him?
Yeah, why not? The guys, but what you have is Muslims are required to use vile, dirty language to insult you. That's one of the requirements of the Sharia. I've showed it before. That's in their doctrine called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. So they have to use nasty, vile language to insult you first. Now, this is optional. They can move straight to killing you. They can move straight to weapons or gang fighting or violence. But typically, they would go through a process, use harsh language, then they would use threats, then they would attack you, then they would attack you with a gang, and then they would bring weapons, right? But they can go straight from 1 to 5. They don't have to go through the other steps. But this kind of language is, again, in the Sharia. We can see it explicitly in the Sharia. These Muslims, even if they claim they don't follow the Sharia, they don't know the Sharia, they don't care about it, they do it to the letter. They follow the Sharia to the letter. Their actions explicitly follow the Sharia. It's not even a guess. It's just, not even a maybe. So last slide. Yeah, so Muslims you just don't know if they're being honest. You just don't know. Are they part of a fifth column? If they're nice people, but they call themselves Muslims, then they are beholden to the Sharia. Then they're following one of the doctrines. Remember, they can also hide their intentions. That's part of Allah will reward them for that. So they're undermining you in a way that you don't see. They're acting against you. They're being nice to you, but in their heart, they hate you. This is also part of the requirement. They have to hate you internally. And also, this creates schizophrenia. This actually creates mental illness. This does destroy their psyches. It creates these psychopaths. It fosters psychopaths, and it encourages psychopaths. So this is part of the psychological problem with Islam. And how do you know? Can you trust that person? You don't know. It's like a landmine. When are you going to step on it? You just don't know. So mudarat, okay, is the Sunni doctrine of deception. It's another name for taqiyya. It's calculated deceit, right? See, so Muhammad Afridi, I mean, as you can see now, he's laughing about the murder of Pakistani Christians and so on and so on, right? And yeah, that's just the kind of people they are, because that's also part of psychological operations. They simply want to goad you. And the whole point is to destroy your heart, as the scholars would write. They want to tear your heart out. They want to, ruin your heart. They want to ruin you emotionally, right? And the simple fact is, we're revealing just how morally bankrupt Islam is, how it's based on lies. So therefore, it cannot. Allah and Yahweh are not the same deities. They're not the same God. They cannot be, because God is good. God is truthful. He cannot be anything but good or truthful. Whereas Allah lies. Allah encourages lies. Allah needs lies. Right? So he encourages lying because then he rewards you for lying. It's simple. So mudarat means flattery, adulation, conformity with deceit, trickery, keeping pace with, to wrap, conceal, or to hide. Okay, there are 10 categories of people targeted by mudarat. The first one is the kafir, the non-Muslims. Then a tyrannical ruler to appease someone who could hurt you, because you appease people that hurt you. Those whose hearts have been recently conciled to Islam, converts, yeah, lie to them. One who has deviated from the truth of Islam to win him back, right? A Muslim has gone astray in imitating the non-believers, a learned scholar or scientist to benefit from his knowledge. This is why Qatar has spent $3.5 billion on universities in America, the top universities, just in the last few years. A friend, everybody, in other words, your enemies, your spouse, a person who may be ill, by giving them hope that he will be well and looks well. So in other words, just lie to everybody. And that's the last slide. So just lie to all and sundry. What the heck? Go wild. But I think hopefully we've shown you that Islam is built on the doctrine of lying. It's integral to Islam. You cannot trust anything. So yeah, everyone's thoughts? And your thoughts. That's me done.
Yeah, no, I'm good. How do you suggest we deal with this crap? I cannot, in the life of me, I cannot think of any other method other than the Amalek one.
Other than?
The Amalek.
Oh, look, it might well come to that, because pushing in that direction. Look,
I just don't see a way out of it. I literally cannot.
Islam needs to be destroyed. If you want to do it without going that route, you are gonna have to.
But that's the thing. That's the problem. Is if they don't start voluntarily, ex-Muslifying themselves, then they are under the catch-22. That means that you have to drown the whole boat.
Contain them. Look, you need to contain them. You need to isolate them. And the other thing you want to do is to convert them. You want to convert them. Then that would be the best option. So train missionaries, especially to deal with these, and then have that happen. But also, I mean, you're just going to have to destroy.
So do you think it's possible? Do you think this is possible?
I would look.
Do you think we can? There is a program that could be built to dismantle it that way?
I mean, I've thought about this. I think conversion is the only way to convert them. But Islam needs to be banned in the West. It needs to be banned. It needs to be understood as a political ideology. It's a deen. The deen is a political ideology, like Nazism. It's a totalitarian. Even within the Islamic sources, where they define it, it's a totalitarian political ideology that controls every aspect of a Muslim's life, and also the non-Muslim. So it needs to be banned. It needs to be understood on par with communism, the slaughter of communism, or Nazism. It's no different. And yeah, it needs to be understood for the dishonest claims they make to be Abrahamic, because that's a complete lie too. That's a complete misrepresentation of what they believe. We have to speak the truth. We have to get the truth out. People need to understand. But
they also don't understand what it means that they're being called Ishmaelites.
There's a lot they don't understand. The problem is we don't think about Islam very much as non-Muslims. But Muslims think about, I mean, you wake up in the morning, you start your day, you think about, you have your coffee, you think about what you're going to do, you think about your day. The Muslim, these Islamists, these fake Islamists, they wake up and they think about your day as well, and they don't like what you're doing, and they plan to change it. That's the difference. And we need to bring attention of this ideology to people to understand what it's really built on. The lies they've told about we are your cousins, we are Abrahamic, and all of that. And the fact that the peaceful Muslim doesn't mean there's peaceful Islam. There were peaceful Nazis too. There was Hans the Nazi, who was a logistics operator in the factory where he shipped bombs off and bullets off to the war front. He was a nice guy. He was a vegetarian, had a dog, loved his family. Does that mean Nazism is peaceful? Because Ahmad the Muslim is peaceful? No, it means nothing. Hans was busy with his jihad by shipping off the bombs and the bullets to the front line, helping them being manufactured and getting there to kill people. And Ahmad is doing something too. We just don't know what yet.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
I mean, I guess in the West.
No. Also, inbreeding, cousin marriage, and so on. And if you look at Muslim countries, they have very low IQs in a lot of them. I mean, you've got IQs below 80 in many cases, and then that's not sufficient for integration into modern Western culture. So those are also problems, And I mean, here you've got a hammer. Half truth is a lie. Islam is a part of Roman Catholicism. Stupidity is a part of this guy's thinking. But yeah, you're welcome to come on my channel. We can talk about Martin Luther. We'll go to the sources in depth if you'd like to, and I'll introduce you to Martin Luther if you'd like to come and have that discussion. Sources have lots of interesting facts that can be verified. But yeah, moving on to a different topic. I mean, what do you think is a solution? But I think it should be banned.
Yeah, I just saw like there is a dramatic agreement this year. The Kurds had agreed to ceasefire and will cooperate with and be part of the new Syrian regime.
Yeah, the Kurds are Muslims too, though.
Yeah.
The Kurds are being attacked by the Turks.
But I also think this is America's bullshit misunderstanding of the area.
Now, when I was in Kurdistan working there, I was told, don't smile at the women, don't look at the women, the men will beat you up. Oh. That's the first thing they told me when I got off the plane, basically. It's like, just don't. And the Kurds are a problem for the Turks because of, obviously, loss of land, independence, loss of oil revenues from areas where there's oil and other resources. So they're choosing the lesser of two evils, let's say. They're choosing their devil because at least the Turks aren't likely to bomb them then. But the Kurds themselves are not good guys just because they're being oppressed. It's like, I mean, honestly, if the Nazis were killing the communists, I wouldn't care because I think that's a good thing. Because, if two nasty problems are canceling each other out, I'm just fine with that. If Hezbollah is killing ISIS, awesome stuff. Just keep that going as long as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, I mean, not violence, I think just conversion, missionaries. I mean, how many churches are there in Saudi Arabia? There's like 1,000 mosques in the UK, but how many churches in Saudi?
Well, how would you do that, in practical terms?
The US would have to start economically. You'd have to put pressure economically. You'd have to put diplomatic pressure. You'd have to force it. You'd have to say, well, you speak the words of equality, show us. We want a cathedral in Riyadh now. And you start closing down mosques. Yeah.
But look how pathetic Europe is against Turkey.
Fortunately, but look, these problems can be solved. I mean, we're a long way down the road of, obviously, the problems that become worse and worse. And the issue, I think, is that we're looking at realistically genuine civil uprising, if not civil war. Because in some cases, there is no easy solution anymore. Unfortunately, the enemy feels that they are strong because they've obviously had lots of political backing and so on. And the host nations have been tolerant, but they the only reason that they got so far is because no one pushed back. Not because everyone is necessarily weak, but because no one's ever pushed back and said no. But if the host nation,
I agree.
if the people start to push back, I mean, they would realize that Europe has a long, centuries-long history, not just World War II, a centuries-long history of killing on an industrial scale, and those sentiments aren't that far away. I mean, even the UK, the Brits have a long history of wiping out, and I mean obliterating enemies in the most horrific ways, given the reasons. And
Well, didn't they invent the concentration camps or something?
Yep. And I feel that that's coming. I sense that it's coming. If you can't have honest conversations,
that's what I'm saying. It's going towards the Amalek treatment.
Look, the enemy. Look, we are afraid to name enemies. The problem is when we say Islamists, no, they're Muslims. Islam is the enemy. Islam is the problem, and these are Muslims doing Islam things. It's simpler. It's not some third random branch. We need to identify the enemy. Part of ideological warfare is to get you to not be able to name the enemy, to point.
Oh, by the way, we're almost at Purim, so I think it's important to say, you know, some Amalek was converted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, sure.
Amalek also includes an option to convert.
Muslim converts become very powerful Christians. When they convert to Christianity, they become really good at being evangelical. So that's an option, I think, that is the least destructive, the most constructive option. And they could...
So they can lie about... But they can lie about converting.
That's also true. But, I mean, yeah, and there's always that question mark. I'm talking to someone right now who converted, but you just don't know. It's hard, but I mean, yeah, so the point is you've got to be cautious. It's hard. But there are those who are sincere. I know a few that are sincere. So, I mean, there are people that
some of them are sincere
converts, and that's good. And I mean, like there's one guy, what was his name? He was with Hizb ut-Tahrir. Part of the Quilliam Foundation. He's a British Muslim. Good grief. Never trusted the guy. Journalist, well known. He was part of Hizb ut-Tahrir. He left, joined Quilliam or founded Quilliam, and eventually the man's a jihadi through and through. I never believed it when he said he left. I never believed it. You know, it's because you can tell sometimes. It's just easy to tell.
But he's still a jihadist.
He's becoming one again, or he's certainly, you know, it's you can see he's talking about it. He's spoken about it. The sentiment
he is. But
yeah, he's back. He's back.
But that's the thing. It's like there's the smallest thing that make them trip.
Yeah.
As well.
So, yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's this. It's a tough, but the point is, look, you're gonna have to. The war is coming. Look, I mean, when I've worked with people, and I've worked with people to deal with lethal situations, right? I've been in those situations myself. When you know it's coming, you have to step in before it gets there, because once it gets to the trigger point, you are then on the receiving end. You've got to step in and try to de-escalate it or stop it or interrupt it before it gets to the trigger point. And the closer you get to the trigger point, the more drastic your interaction is, and then potentially it can actually trigger the action you're trying to prevent. But if you get in early enough, you can suppress it and you can dissipate it. So the fight's coming. They're bringing it. The fight is coming, whether we like it or not. So we need to step in prior. We need to push it off that path and down another path. So because the fight's coming, and I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people are going to get hurt before Europe wakes up. But once Europe wakes up, I suspect if there's civil revolt, it will lead to slaughter, indiscriminate slaughter. I'm a black guy in a white country. Everyone's going to look at me as enemy. They're not going to discriminate. I'm one of the bad guys. They're going to look at me, wrong skin color, too bad, you die. Understand? I can hold my own. I have held my own, but against the mob, 50 people,
run towards Israel. I'll let them know you're one of us.
Cool. Yeah. No, I'll get ready. But you understand the problem. You understand the potential
but like
issue.
colorism doesn't work here, so.
Yeah, fine, but you understand the potential problem. Some people are not gonna,
No,
because
it's
once their
not gonna
family
happen. It is what. But you see, this is one of the biggest thing that like tension points between American Jews and Israeli Jews.
again, sorry.
This is one of the biggest tension points between American Jews and also European Jews and Israeli Jews,
Mhm.
right? Like European Jews, like the Israeli Jews are like, you know what, to get rid of the problem, like we're willing to just come here, you know, like yeah, you're gonna get the backlash, but like you can come here instead, like. And the American Jews like, no, we want to live in the United States, and it's like this is the point of like tension, right? Where the Israelis, where people are willing to take a risk in accordance to where they live.
Yeah. Look, I think America is going to turn things around. The pendulum is swinging back. I suspect the pendulum is swinging back. It's just that if something happens, let's say a bomb goes off and 100 people die, and that changes the sentiment, and that can lead to people acting irrationally. And there's going to be a trigger. Something's going to happen, and it's going to cause
Yeah,
that. And that for me is a genuine concern, right? People don't think very well when they are mob. They're not exactly doing PhD analyses of issues at that point. So, but I think that we need to be able to talk about this, because then we can let off steam, we can settle disagreements with genuine discussion, and point out the truth about Islam. We need to talk about these things. At the moment, we can't. Politicians are against us, the media is against us, but our voices ultimately will be heard, and people will understand that Islam is evil. It is morally bankrupt, morally corrupt, and it is evil. It's an evil ideology. It needs to be exposed, and it needs to be tossed onto the garbage heap of history and set on fire.
yeah, 100%. Here's the thing. Okay, so for a lot of Jews, like they also see Christianity with suspicion, like you say, converting
That's
them,
that's
like and
history.
the
I mean, look,
converting to them.
there's a lot of bad blood because of history. I mean, that's a valid point. That's a genuine valid point. And I mean, you look at the history of someone like Martin Luther. I mean,
Yeah,
his ideas led to genocide, quite bluntly.
and
So
yeah, and there were enough Catholic popes as well that were.
yep. No, the one difference though, I mean, man, the thing is, I would need to bring a lot of, as I said, I would need to bring a lot of historical evidence and work through it step by step. But one difference is you've got a pope. Eventually, the Catholic Church recanted, admitted its error, recanted, changed its policy, and said, "Look, this is how we do things now," and that's valid for all Catholics. Now, let's say Johnny Baptist, of the 14th Baptist Church of Bob's Garage, right? If he decides he's going to change his view on Jews and be nice today, well, he's got 4 members of his church. Doesn't matter what he thinks, because the world doesn't care. No one cares. He's got 4 members, and tomorrow one of his members is going to split off and start the 15th church of Bob's Garage. So what does it matter? It doesn't. There's nothing that on the Protestant side you can say that becomes normative for all of that group, because they're so divided. So those are problems. But historically, at least those problems aren't as present today. But certainly there are problems which are bubbling up. We're seeing it. October 7th has unleashed a wave of anti-Semitism that is deeply concerning. And worth discussing. But that said, again, we need to talk about these issues, expose these issues, lie by lie, fact by fact. And they are good people. We need to find them. And by being able to talk about these issues, we can learn who are the good people, identify the bad people. And eventually, at some point, things like shame have to come back. We have to ostracize. You have to penalize. You have to use whatever methods, right? Not illegally, not using violence, but we have to use social methods that worked in the past. And we have to acknowledge history.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like shame versus cancellation. This is why you have a book like a Talmud. It's like everything's discussed there.
Yeah. But if you look at
Yeah.
moral, I mean, would you want to be, if someone was immoral, like a thief, you would shame someone for being a thief. That's moral. There's a moral basis for that. Wokies, you got the wrong opinions. Whereas you're
So,
shaming someone for doing something that's objectively illegal and immoral. Yeah.
so like Judaism is more case by case. Is it faith because he was hungry and literally had no other choice, or is it faith because he is a faith? I mean,
True, but yeah, I mean, granted, there are exceptions. I mean, but that's what the Talmud does. It discusses a problem from every
but
possible
this is
angle.
also the problem with a lot of things, right? So Jews, because they have the Talmud, it's like you said, like there are things that are ingrained in you because of the culture you grew up in, and it's very hard to understand sometimes like a different culture. So like I think a lot of times like Jews don't understand, like they go issue by issue, and then a lot of others don't understand why Jews are so bad at like giving like generalizations, right? In general.
Mhm.
So even you said do not lie, but this is a mistranslation of what is written in the
Not
Ten Commandments.
like I originally said, yeah.
Yeah, don't give. And then the second version is don't give witness in vain.
Mhm.
So it's not just like, it's like also do not. Somebody asks you, right, in an environment, let's say like being gay is wrong, but because this is an example, right? Somebody asks, hey, this person is gay, and they can hang them for that. But like this is not something that like they don't do anything that hurts others, let's say. What like this is why I think it changed from like even it's like false witness versus witness in vain, right? There's also like those nuances, and it's so like, and when you say it to somebody, it's like, oh, so Jews are allowed to lie. That's what I'm saying. No, Jews are
No,
not allowed to give.
this is looking at the moral consequences, which has a genuine moral consequence, and it's not something
Right.
that.
But people don't
Whereas
understand like
Islam,
why Jews like talk with such nuances, right?
mhm.
So like, okay, so you can lie because if somebody asks you if somebody's gay, then you're gonna say no if you think that they're gonna get hanged for it.
Yeah, it's going to cause horrendous sin.
Right. So what do people do? Like what Christians do? I'm sorry, like I'm gonna say Westerns do because this is what we suffer from. They say,
Mhm.
okay, so Jews are allowed to lie.
Which is odd because Christian morality is derived from the
But it's
Jewish
not because
Torah.
it's like but it's without the nuance culture. It's more
Granted, but
obsolete.
if you go back to the scholasticism of the Catholic Church, you look at Thomas Aquinas and Anselm, they were very particular as well, very detailed. They started to, shall we say, mimic the concept. If you look at the idea of pilpul in the Jewish concept of
Yeah.
attacking something from every angle, breaking it from every angle, they applied the same logic, the same approach, a very structured approach as well. I mean, that was part, but we've lost that tradition. We've lost that tradition in the West. Now you've got emotional thinking, rhetoric-based thinking. There's that
Right.
lack of logic, and this we need to bring back as the trivium, understanding grammar, logic, and then rhetoric in that order. So we've lost that attachment to reality, and this is and a lot of this can be traced back. And I'll upset. Look, I mean, I do controversial things on my channel. It will upset people, but a lot of that is traced directly to the Reformation, which destroyed that heavy reliance on logic. If you read, and again, I'll state this bluntly, Martin Luther. If you read Martin Luther's last speech in Wittenberg, it's 10 pages, 11 pages long, and he calls reason logic. Right? Martin Luther despised reason. Now, despite whatever other scholars or theologians might say, um, Martin Luther despised reason, and he calls it over 30 times. He calls it about 33 times in that paper. He says that reason, logic, is the devil's whore. It is a satanic tool. It's how Satan
Right.
misleads you with reason, with logic. And in fact, he says, and he writes this, Martin Luther's language will make a sailor blush. He says that you should take shit and rub it in the whore's face. You should take reason and trample it under your feet. And he goes on. So over 30 times he calls it reason satanic. And then he goes on with a bunch of other insults on top of that. So like over 40 times. in 10 pages. The guy like insults reason as the worst thing. So unfortunately, this has bled into the culture as well.
Yeah, it's also like somebody says something interesting, and I'm gonna take it in Hebrew, but I'm gonna take the point. So even in Judaism, right, we have all sorts of sects and sometimes cults, and then there are some that let's say the more that we generally look at them as more Islamized, right, Islamic style, versus like those who are Christian style. And personally, a good way to figure out if the Jewish person in front of you, right, is the Christianized Jew, is to tell them of something that is going on that is, let's say, bad or has something to do with them. If their answer is prayer, they're Christianized. If their answer is action, that's like more classic Jew.
Okay, interesting.
And this is something that a lot of like people point out, like why are like Christians don't take action, they pray. You know, so that's another big difference. So it's the nuances versus, that's one. And the second thing is like the prayer versus action. And I can say like Jews that say pray, like I know that this is Jews who they're historically they are influenced by Christian culture.
Say again, please. The last to us.
Like Jews who go to, I'll do something like I'll pray for you.
Okay, yeah.
Or like, you know, this is Christianized.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so there are these differences. Certainly there's differences, but there's also similarity, there's overlap. And I mean,
yeah.
So there's that. There's a certain shared morality, a certain shared culture, a certain shared religious ideals. I mean, yeah, Jews are obviously going to have a lot of their ideas as to all of that, but there's a certain overlap in terms of that. So there's more similarity than
there is, because we have Christianized Jews and we call them Jews, even though a lot of us think that they're a little more like Christians, and they're like a lot of the ultra-Orthodox sects are like that. Like they rose in Europe, and like a lot of their paradigms are like Christian.
Yeah, there's also a lot of liberal Jews. I mean, yeah, I've done a lot of shows with Jewish friends in Israel and stuff, but there's some really liberal Jews, very atheistic Jews, and it's just like, yeah, it's a little. I mean, I have a Jewish colleague that hanging out with him is very frustrating because he can only eat, I don't know, like yellow striped chickpeas and water that's been dehydrated, and then he has to add something to undehydrate the water, and you're like, where the heck can we eat? What restaurant can we go to? And you're like, I brought you a carrot, try that. You know, so it's really tough. But yeah, I mean, there's
that's Jewish, by the way. Like this kind of cultism, that's Jewish.
Oh no, he's very strict. He's very strict. Shlomi is
but
very
like
strict.
Some sort of, because this is also like something that you can see like repeating, right? So this is like genuinely Jewish thing to become a little bit too observant. Like think like there was a sect, right, in the time of Jesus that would not go to the bathroom on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a lot to discuss. I mean, there's a lot to go through in terms of. But I hope that my just the brief stuff I did on the Talmud, hopefully that gave people an insight into the fact that people are deceiving about the Talmud. And look, granted, I have gone on the whole path with Christians. I know a lot of quote unquote Christians tell lies about the Talmud, right? They've been misled.
Right.
I mean, the communists went out of their way to lie about the Jews and the Talmud, right? There was that. The Muslims go out of their way to do the very same. A lot of these are joint operations between these. The Messianic.
This is an example. There is a sect like that too.
But the weird thing is there's so many, as you say, so many differences and variants, and there's no longer this consistency. So when you say Jews, it's like, okay, hold on, which group are we referring to?
No. Jews is Jews, just like Jews is an ethnic group. It's not that hard.
Yeah. True, but but not everyone understands it that way. So
Like
when
it's
you say like, oh,
it changed me.
yeah. So anyway, look, I have a very busy day tomorrow. I've got a very long day at work tomorrow, so maybe we
What
should
did
call
I
it a
do?
night here. See that your battery pack needs
Yeah,
to be
for
changed.
sure.
So hopefully
Yeah.
you've learned something interesting about lying in Islam. It's fundamental. Yeah, I've covered quite a bit, and you can see lying is not an option in Islam. Muslims are lying to you, and unfortunately, if the ideology is built on lies, then by default, everything that proceeds from that is in some way tainted by error and lies. It's never the full truth. It's as simple as that. And remember, it's antithetical to logic.
Yeah, scary. All right, everybody, good night. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Lloyd, for being here again. You're extremely knowledgeable. And also go follow him and watch his channel. I have to say, like, he has discussions that really go in depth into a lot of, like, various things that are, like, fascinating. So if you are into, like, real intellectual talk, like, not pseudo-intellectual, like, you know, this is where do you go, Lloyd, 100%. So thank you, everybody, for being here.
Yeah, I go into a lot of citations, details, and thank you very much again. Hopefully we can do this again, perhaps talk about jihad and dimitude and such, things like that. I mean, there's a lot to be discussed, but hopefully everyone will use this. And Islam is a serious threat. It's a threat. We need to talk about it openly. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for the time.
Thank you. Good night.